Good morning, welcome along to Tipp today, 1800 938 007. That's our free phone number, it won't cost you anything to make a call to us, and Stephen is producing today. Coming up on the show this morning, we'll chat about the ceremonies to mark the 110th anniversary of the 1916 Easter Rising. We'll also speak to Martin Quinn about his recent trip to New York and the prestigious award that he received there. Paul Lafford is a regular contributor to the show, and he says he feels sorry for the government. We'll tease that one out. We'll be hearing from health insurance expert Dermot Good from Health Insurance Authority, and he'll be here with some practical advice for you. We'll hear from a Greyhound owner responding to a recent discussion involving Greyhound Action Ireland, and as always on a Friday, the Friday panel will be unpacking the hot topics of the week. So all of that and more on the way. You can text and WhatsApp 083 311 3311. You can email Tipp today at tippfm.com. Let's have a look at the front pages of some of your newspapers. The Irish Independent, and Charlie Weston is telling us that older people trying to downsize are to be exempted from a central bank income rule that can prevent them buying a new home, and the relaxation of the rules around so-called bridging loans could free up thousands of homes for young families if older people could find suitable homes to move to. And that's the important part of that statement, if they could find suitable homes to move to. The Irish Daily Mail, the lead story on the Mail today, an inmate who died after being moved to a padded cell had been stripped naked by officers and had apparent bruising to his body and to his head. Colm Connolly, who's 46, was pronounced dead in the cell at the Midlands prison in Portleash on Wednesday morning, and it was confirmed that 3 separate investigations are being carried out by the Gardaí, the Office of the Inspector of Prisons, and the Irish Prison Service itself. The Irish Examiner is dominated by a photograph of 3 beautiful children praying, and that's ahead of today's Good Friday pageant performed by the St. John the Baptist Liturgy drama group in St. John's Parish in Tralee. It was a beautiful picture of little children there. The lead story, changes to Ireland's intoxicated driving laws could be triggered by the case of a former model who crashed her SUV in a Cork suburb, killing her friend and blaming the victim for driving. A substantial Garda investigation was required before Jennifer Thomas could be charged with dangerous driving that led to the death of her close friend of more than 20 years, Sheila Dunn. Also on the Examiner today, we're reading that misinformation around autism is on the rise, and it's being fueled by conspiracy theories and pseudoscience advice around cures for autism as well. Finally, a look at the Irish Times, and the lead story on the Times today. The Minister for Defence, Helen McEntee, was forced to cancel a visit to Lebanon this week after the Defence Forces advised it would be too dangerous for her to travel. So that's a look at what's making headlines today. Do you want to make comment on any of that? And if you do, again, 083 311 3311. Now, a ceremony to mark the 110th anniversary of the 1916 Easter Rising will take place outside of the GPO on O'Connell Street, Dublin, on this Easter Sunday, and that's commencing at 12 noon. But there are a number of ceremonies taking place in Tipperary this weekend, and I'm glad to be joined now by regular contributor to Tipp today, Tom Hennessy. Good morning to you, Tom.
Morning, Fran.
Good to talk to you today, Tom. Your own ceremony is starting off in Clogheen, I think, on this coming Saturday, April 4th, isn't it? Tomorrow.
Yeah, so tomorrow evening at 6:30, we'll assemble there outside the community hall, which is the old Church of Ireland building where Thomas J. Clarke's mother Mary married his father James. And we'll march then to the little 1916 garden, which is just off the road as you go up towards the V there. But great, well done to the locals that got that up at the anniversary of the 1916 Rising, and they also marked the house where Mary Palmer, Tom's mother, was reared. So if you come tomorrow evening, you'll be able to actually see, we'll be actually having a cup of tea afterwards and sandwiches in the building, which was the church where Tom's mother and father got married, and we'll also be passing the house that Mary was reared in. So you have huge history there in a small little space, and I suppose it's amazing that it hasn't been made more of over the years. But I would say that that's not surprising, because in my opinion, I think a lot of what went on has been brushed under the carpet, and they'd prefer us not to be doing what we're doing. But we are proud to be remembering not only Thomas J. Clarke, but all, I suppose, the 7 signatories and all the ordinary, like there's a list there. I put it on the back of our booklet the time we put up the headstone in Glasnevin, and the many people don't know the ordinary men and women that went out in 1916 and lost their lives. And that's, it just shows that these people were willing to pay the ultimate sacrifice. And look, I think it's very important that we keep commemorating them, and to not lose focus, Fran, on what the proclamation says. And for me, the proclamation of 1916 is the blueprint for what Ireland should be today, and in my opinion, we're not there.
Yeah, it has a lot to say to us. I read it again this morning because I knew we were going to chat, Tom, and there's a lot in there that we could, or that we should apply, I suppose, to life in Ireland today. Would you agree?
I would, yeah. And I see crazy headlines there where there's another 170 million being paid to the Ukraine, and on the newspaper there, the Irish Independent, I think it was, the big heading there 2 days ago, the list for the kids waiting for the scoliosis operations hasn't moved in 2 years. So, I mean, the men of 1916, they put it down there in plain black and white. Padraig Pearse, they all had their motives for striking the blow against tyranny, and tyranny is what they were living under. And even though it was only a small minority that were willing to do it, it was a continuation of what went on in the generations previous, from the Fenians of 1798.
It was, but along with all the Republican content in it, it has a social consciousness as well, because it's talking about cherishing all of the children of the nation equally, and we're not doing that. Sure, we're not.
No, and sure, look, even locally, we've my good friend there, Sean Meehan, and he's fighting to try and keep a roof over his head, while there's cabins after being erected all over the country, no planning. So we've an Irishman being treated as a second-class citizen. So yeah, there's a load to it's there, it's written there. Everyone should have it up. And I also think there's a lot of hypocrisy regarding those in government today that will go. They'll probably have some ceremony somewhere over the weekend and they'll lay wreaths, but yet the goal of those men has not been realised. And I believe that we've gone off the path. And we still have the same army that those lads went out, the same army that put those men up against the wall in Kilmainham, and poor James Connolly sitting in the chair, riddled with bullets. The same army is still claiming jurisdiction over 6 of our counties, and there'll be independent Republican groups now will assemble all over the 6 counties, and they'll be basically they'll face harassment, and there'll be surveillance, and how far have we come? The British are still claiming jurisdiction, but you might have seen there, I'm involved with a case on the Knockmeal Downs, Fran, where farmers are fighting land that was stolen from them, following the Cromwellian confiscations, and we have an English lord claiming that he still owns the right to the mountain, stolen land, that all this should have been sorted. With the treaty in 1921, there was deals done, and unfortunately, the men of 1916, in my opinion, were betrayed, and we are where we are. But it's incumbent on every generation to try and right the wrongs of the history gone past. And when you have a situation where you have a lord worth 900 million or some crazy figure trying to drive Irish farmers with a 900% increase off the lovely mountains the Knockmeal Downs that their people have earned a living on since before the 1400s, there's something seriously wrong, Fran.
Yeah, there's another line in the proclamation, and it has great strength indeed. It says, "We declare the right of the people of Ireland to the ownership of Ireland and to the unfettered control of Irish destinies, to be sovereign and to be indefeasible." It's a huge amount in that one line, isn't there?
Oh, sure, look, Fran, doesn't that say it all? And as you said, there's a huge amount in the proclamation. But I suppose, that's why I'd encourage everyone. The nice thing about Easter, wear your Easter lily. No one group, no one political party can claim they own the Easter lily. It was Coming the Man ladies that started selling the lilies about 10 years after the Rising, the Easter Rising, to support the Republican prisoners. But I've had people say to me when they see the Easter lily, you're affiliated to a certain party. No, the Easter lily is owned by the Irish people. And, wear your Easter lily with pride. And the other thing I'd say, Fran, is that the likes of what we were doing on Saturday, that's an independent commemoration. We're not linked to any political party. So you can come to our commemoration and you can stand there, you'll be welcomed. And, that's where I believe we need to get back to grassroots activism. And, what was the 1916 Rising about? It was a small minority trying to free our country from the yoke of British imperialism and tyranny. And we need to basically get back to the basics. We need to put the proclamation front and centre. And, as I say, there's a lot of fake politics and revisionism at play in our country. But I still believe, Fran, that there's a lot of really good people, and I meet them every day on the ground. And there's a lot of people not even voting anymore, Fran. Which is a sad reflection. But I do think that we're in changing times, and there's bigger crowds now coming to independent commemorations, which is great. And I do think there's an appetite for it. But, there's huge credit to all those great people that went before us, that kept the flag flying when it wasn't popular to be doing so in the 80s. I remember going to my first commemoration with my grandfather, Jack, in Kilfeacle in 86 or 87. And, it wasn't easy to do that, and they had their names taken and stuff. So it's great. We're following on from the previous generation, from our grandparents' generation, that we're proud to be Irish. And that's what it's about, Fran. And it's sad to hear a leader saying that we have to get away from a narrow-minded view of what it means to be Irish. Like, most Irish people know what it means to be Irish, and we love our culture, we love our heritage, and for a so-called leader to be throwing aspersions on having a narrow-minded view, I don't really even know where they're coming from. And also, we've had crazy comments made about our tricolours flying. And I say, fly your tricolours day and night. That protocol was made up by the Free State to discourage people flying the tricolour, as far as I can see. But fly your tricolour with pride, and not only this weekend, but fly it the whole year round.
All right, Tom. So your assembly tomorrow at the community hall in Clogheen, and that's at about 6:30 there. Good to talk to you, Tom. Thanks very much indeed, and happy Easter. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Brad.
Thank you. Good morning to you. Now, North Tipperary Sinn Féin will hold its annual Easter 1916 commemorations in Thurles and Ian. I'm glad to be joined now by Dan Harty, who's Cathaoirleach of North Tipperary Sinn Féin. Good morning to you, Dan.
A very good morning to you, Fran. A very good morning to your listeners, and happy Easter to everybody. And I hope you enjoyed the weekend and stay safe over the weekend.
And many happy returns to you. Will you tell us about two commemorations? And I think you want to talk to us about the George Plant commemoration as well, Dan.
Yes, we have a couple of events on this weekend. I suppose this is a weekend where Republicans across Tipperary gathered to commemorate those who died for Irish freedom. And I suppose in our own party, we like to recommit ourselves to achieving the 32-county republic that was set out in the 1916 proclamation, and indeed in the democratic programme of the First Dáil. I suppose this year we'll be out, like we are every year, I suppose, out selling the Easter lilies as well. And this year's particularly significant. It's actually the centenary of the use of the Easter lily. This year, 100 years, it was created in 1926. By Cumann na Man at the time. It was a symbol created by Sheila Humphreys and Fiona Plunkett, and it was popularised by Cumann na Man at that time. So I think that's kind of interesting, and it's important, I think, just to recognise the contribution that women and indeed Cumann na Man as an organisation made to the struggle for Irish freedom as well.
Especially here in Tipperary, Dan. I mean, they were very active here, weren't they?
Absolutely, yeah. There was, I actually got a book just earlier this week, Revolutionary Women of Tipperary, a book by Noreen Higgins McHugh, that kind of details the different branches and organisations and membership across Tipperary.
It's a fantastic book. I spoke to her on the publication of it. It's a marvellous read.
It's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's very comprehensive, and I urge people with an interest in it to purchase it and go through it. Going through it there, just some of the pension records. It's just a short story there. Actually, a family member of mine that ran into mine appeared in the pension records of it. Delia Ryan, she was based in Thurles. I remember kind of a story we have within the family. She was asked to deliver communications, a comms, as one time around the station of Knocklong rescue Sean Hogan, and she had a pair of shoes that were kind of altered to hold a little compartment in it to hold this communications. And the communications read that Greyhound was on the train, obviously referencing Sean Hogan at the time that he was on board and that the rescue attempt was to go ahead. So interesting as well.
Isn't
obviously
it
there was
just,
women involved in all sorts of the safe houses around the county and that, and they put the bills out.
Well, it's a fascinating history for sure. So what's happening in Thurles and Nina then, Dan?
Yeah, I'll just give you a quick rundown. I'll just do the North Tip ones first. Then just in Thurles at 11:45 to assemble for 12 p.m. start at the Stoneman statue in Liberty Square. We'll have a short commemoration. I'll be chairing the event myself, and the main oration will be delivered by Martin Brown. So anyone in the Thurles area obviously is welcome to come along to that. And our main commemoration in North Tipperary will take place in Nina on Easter Sunday as well. And that will be assembled at 2:30 p.m. for a 3 p.m. start at the Republican Monument in Bamba Square. And Fane's Damien O'Donoghue will chair that event, and the main speaker will be Clare TD Donna McGettigan. We're delighted to have over. Just briefly in South Tip as well, there will be a reclaim ceremony at the Republican plot in the cemetery in Carrigan-Shore at 11 a.m. People are welcome to come along to that. And the main commemoration in South Tipperary will assemble at 2:30 p.m. for a 3 p.m. start, commemorating Oglach George Plant at St. Jamesstown Cemetery in Feathers. So Councillor David Dunn will chair that event, and the main oration will be delivered by Carol Kilkenny, TD, Natasha Newsom-Drennan. So everyone is welcome to come along to that as well.
Very good. So certainly lots happening indeed. I was talking to Tom Hennessy there about the proclamation. Yes. I think it's important that we would read it every so often, Dan. Would you go along with that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And that's something all these events, the proclamation will be read out at these events. But it's something to be considered as well, and to take on board what has been stated in the proclamation. It's an important document, I think.
And it still resonates today, does it not? I mean, I was speaking there about that line about cherishing all of our children, and we see little of that when we look at mental health issues with our children, or scoliosis, or that kind of thing. We need to cherish our children equally, don't we?
Oh, absolutely, and that's a very important aspect of the document. And it's, look, I suppose when we talk about the Republic not being delivered, I think that's a major aspect of it. We need to cherish our children equally, and obviously...
and our sovereignty, which is so important too, isn't it?
Absolutely, and I think the debate at the moment is very important around Irish neutrality, and the issue around the triple lock is coming up now very fast, and with the international affairs around the Iran war and stuff like that, I think lock should come into sharp focus at the moment, because I think that is very important. And if that were to be removed, you'd have to Donald Trump use the statements he's made around bullying countries about landing in airports, and that's kind of our only protection, to keep an American use of Shannon Airport down to a minimum. And we do know that there is flights landing there, but I think that would open Pandora's box if we were to remove the triple lock. It would put Ireland in a very difficult diplomatic situation, I feel.
Yeah, well, a lot of people would agree with you on that, I presume. Dan, good to talk to you today, and have a good Easter.
Much,
Thank you. Bye-bye to you. That's Dan Harty speaking to us there. 1800 938 007. A caller saying the proclamation is largely ignored by the current generation in power. Now it's all about rights for the politicians, not for the people, and that needs to change. This Easter is a time to reset. This is one of our listeners. Lovely to hear from my good friend in Kappa White, Patricia Walsh, was on to say that the Kappa White Community Centre, they're playing host to the Dolan family. That would be the family of the late great Joe Dolan. And they're remembering Joe on Saturday the 11th of April, with doors opening there at 7 p.m, with a show starting at 8 p.m. If you want tickets for that, if you have a pen handy, you might just jot down a number. And I presume this is Patricia's number. It's 087 982 9111. So if you want tickets for the Dolan family, 087 982 9111. Back in just a tad.
Tipp FM's Tip Today.
With Slattery's Garage, Puck On. Main Peugeot dealers in the Premier County. And now stocking the full range of the luxury French car brand DS Automobiles. Book your test drive today with Slattery's Garage, Puck On. See slatterysgarage.ie.
Coming up from 12 midday.
The Lunchtime Show with Stephen Keogh.
Then from 3 p.m, it's Owen Lonergan on Drive Time.
Playing the music today. See slatterysgarage.ie.
Tipperary author, broadcaster and indeed regular contributor to Tip Today, Martin Quinn, has received a rare and prestigious honour in the United States, with Westchester County government officially proclaiming Saturday, April 18th, as Martin Quinn Day. And Martin joins me online now. Good morning to you, Martin.
Good morning, Fran.
And many congratulations to you, Martin. This is incredible. I think it began when you were selected as Grand Marshal by the County Tipperary Association in New York. Is that fair to say, Martin?
That's fair to say, it is indeed. I suppose I was really thrilled, first of all, with being selected as Grand Marshal and having the opportunity to go to New York. First time I was ever in the States, and it was really a wonderful, wonderful occasion. And I think wonderful to be part of the community out there celebrating St. Patrick's Day and indeed St. Patrick's Week, because we had two parades. We had the main parade in New York City on St. Patrick's Day, and then there was another parade in Yonkers, which is a very strong Irish community. Yes. And we had parade there on the Saturday after St. Patrick's Day. So it was really a huge opportunity for me to be able to go out there and to represent Tipperary and fly the flag for Tipperary in New York and in Yonkers.
And tell me about the aspect of it then that has resulted in you having a day of your own in the States, Martin.
Yes, I'm quite taken aback. I was quite taken aback
yes.
by it, to be honest, because after the parade in Yonkers, there was an event, a reception afterwards at Katie's cottage there, and I was asked to say a few words because I was making a presentation to Norbert Hennessy and to the County Tipperary Association to thank them for inviting me out. And I saw this gentleman coming in, and I knew that he had a presentation, but I didn't know what at all it was about. So the gentleman was a man by the name of David Tibiolo, and he's one of the legislators of the Westchester County, and he had come along. He had been aware of my CV and my involvement in community particularly, and particularly my role with the Tipperary International Peace Award. And he knew that I was coming out to New York for the parades, obviously, and he, with the other legislators, decided that they would like to honour the fact that I was selected, first of all, by the County Tipperary Association, and then was making the journey over. They'd like to honour me with a day of my own, Martin Quinn Day, which I never heard of before, but anyway, it's a huge honour. And I'd just like to say that, you know, it was completely surprise to me, completely out of the blue. I had no indication whatsoever that this was going to happen. And I know that Westchester County is a very big area, and it takes in the Yonkers area. So I was delighted really to have the honour of from Westchester County legislators, their board of legislators, to be honoured with the day.
Well, I think it's all the more special in the times that we're living in that you will be recognised for your work with Tipperary International Peace Award, Martin, because, you know, the world is largely in conflict now. America itself in conflict in Iran. So it makes it all the more special, I guess.
It does indeed, and I had the opportunity to speak at a couple of events with the County Tipperary Association, but I also had the opportunity to speak at a bowling green on the day prior to St. Patrick's Day. There was a flag-raising ceremony there attended by a huge number of dignitaries, and the event was really to celebrate the immense contribution of the Irish to the founding and development of the United States. As you know, it's 250 years, and I was really honoured to be invited by Hilary Byrne. Hilary was the gentleman that was organising the flag-raising event, and he asked me to speak, and I was able to speak about the Tipperary International Peace Award, about its history and its purpose and its role, I suppose, in building bridges. And I particularly was able to focus on the number of American people that have received the award, because, as you know yourself, there's quite a number of American people that have received the award over the years. And I was really humbled, I suppose, by the many kind comments afterwards from people. And there was a good representation there as well of mayors and different people from Ireland that were over for the event. So it was great to have the opportunity to be able to talk about Tipperary and what Tipperary has been doing for peace. And I was saying that, you know, how important it is now in the world that we're living in. Peace is never more needed as it is at the moment. And I just hope that maybe the message might resonate with people.
People who haven't been in New York around St. Patrick's Day, I'm not sure they get a full sense of the importance of St. Patrick's Day in New York. I mean, the parade itself, it's so vibrant, even still, isn't it?
Oh, it's absolutely. It would just kind of take your breath away, because, you know, I had an indication, of course, of the parade in New York from media coverage in the past, but you don't get the feeling of it until you're out there, and until you see the thousands and thousands of people that are lining the street, and that the number of marching groups, of course, and bands as well. But the people that are out there, you know, you know, from every part of the world that are now residents out there, and how important St. Patrick's Day is to them. And, you know, the general comment was, everybody is Irish on St. Patrick's Day. And it was really the case, I suppose, people coming up to me. You know, I met one particular couple who, as I was walking along the street, they saw the sash and they called me across the street. They were dressed in head to toe in green. That's no exaggeration. Completely dressed in head to toe in green. A lady and a gentleman, and they were from Sweden.
That's amazing.
I was expecting they to be from some part of America, or maybe even Ireland, but no, they were from Sweden, and they had come over especially, and they said, you know, they had to get the feeling of what St. Patrick's Day was like, because they were even saying that it was big for them, and they just wanted to be part of the whole celebration. So, I mean, walking up Fifth Avenue and down by St. Patrick's Cathedral and along by Central Park, and thousands of people, and cheering and waving, and quite a lot of people shouting up Tipp along the way as well. So you really don't get an idea of it until you're out there.
Absolutely, and there's a growing cynicism here about St. Patrick's Day celebrations around the world, Martin. But I think that's missing the whole point. I mean, any other country would kill for this, wouldn't they?
They would indeed, and we had the opportunity to go to Mass in St. Patrick's Cathedral on St. Patrick's morning, and again, there meeting people after the Mass. I had the opportunity, I had the great opportunity to meet Mary Robinson there and to speak again about the Tipperary International Peace Award that you received, and meeting different people there after the Mass. And even there was the US Senator Patricia Fahy, whose ancestors came from Ireland, and how important it is to them, St. Patrick's Day. And I met a gentleman as well who read at Mass, who was part of the US Army. Seamus Fennessy was his name, and his relatives were from Tipperary, from Clonmel. And again, how important it was to him to be part of the Mass and to be able to read at the Mass. And I think we forget all of that, when we talk about St. Patrick's Day, and it is so important to people in America. It's hard to quantify it, actually. It is really so important to people.
Well, that's for sure. Will you go out again on April 18th for your own day?
I doubt if I'll make that journey as much as I would like to, but I doubt that I'll find some other way of celebrating it here at home, I think. I definitely like to go out in the future,
yes.
All right, because I had such a wonderful experience. I mean, Norbert Hennessy, who you know,
Sure.
Norbert was the reason that I was invited to see, nominated me, and he just pulls out all the stops. He's a real live wire when it comes to promoting Tipperary, particularly in America. And for all of that reason, I really like to have the opportunity maybe to go again.
Well, I'm delighted for you, and well deserved. Deputy Michael Murphy was on to offer his congratulations to you, Martin. He said an extraordinary honour and so well deserved, and he said such a positive force in our community. So many congratulations, Martin, and lovely to talk to you again. Thanks for coming on with me. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Fran.
Thank you. Bye-bye to you now. That's Martin Quinn speaking to us there after that wonderful experience in America, particularly in New York and Yonkers. 1800 938 007 if you want to speak to Stephen. We'll take a break. Back in just a moment.
Tipp FM's Tip Today.
With Slattery's Garage, puck on. It's time to change. Test drive the award-winning range of Peugeot hybrids and fully electric vehicles at Slattery's Garage today. See slatterysgarage.ie.
Frozen berry blast, please. You all right, love?
Do you know what I've done?
What have you done?
Do you see Pete sleeping over there? I got the sun cream and I've only gone and drawn it.
1-800-938 007.
And you're very welcome back to Tip Today, 1800 938 007. Now, Jamie was on to tell me that Adrian Ryan is supplying the music tonight up in Laura, if you're into dancing. And of course the dancing kicks off there at 9 p.m. A listener saying, why do the people who organise the Easter commemorations never give out local landmarks or the hall? Well, I thought we did. Tom was telling us that's happening in Clogheen at 6:30 tomorrow evening, and setting out there from the hall. And Dan was telling us the Thurles commemoration is starting there at the Stoneman statue in Liberty Square, and also in Nina as well. I just don't have that to hand at the moment, but I know they give out all the places where the commemorations are being held, I think, Jamie, and I'll find out more information and bring it to you a little bit later on as well. There was one other thing I wanted to bring you here, and happy Easter to you and your listeners, Fran. You might give a mention to the Gartnahoe Community Hall. They're holding their Easter bingo this Saturday at 4 p.m. Doors opening at 3. Over €4,100 in prize money, including a special game for €800. Easter eggs on every win, and everybody is welcome along there too. Okay, lots more coming into us, but I'll have it glanced through it and I'll bring it to you in just a few moments' time. Earlier on this week, we spoke to the Taoiseach and Finance Minister, Simon Harris, and there was a huge reaction on the show, many getting in touch to share their anger indeed at the state of the country and particularly where the cost of living is concerned. Paul Lafford, regular contributor to the show over many years, was in touch and joins me now. Good morning to you, Paul.
Hi, Fran. How are you?
I think this might make people a little cross, Paul. You said that you feel bad for the government because they're stuck between a rock and a hard place right now. So, as they say in the Leaving 30 years ago, discuss, Paul, discuss. Why do you feel sorry for them?
Well, before people start screaming at their radios, I would ask them to hear me out, please. Fran, I actually think that the biggest problem is that we've government, we've got ministers, we've got politicians in this country who are so hopelessly out of their depth. And I think it's like the world is in a very, very bad state of chaos at the moment, and we have huge issues facing this country. And when you listen to people like Simon Harris that spoke, doing his best, talking to you the other morning, you can actually just see that he's just not capable of doing what he has to do. Now, in preparation for this, I kind of had a quick look through some of the problems that this country is facing at the moment. And I could have kept going forever writing them down. I didn't realise it was so bad. But if we take the Children's Hospital, for instance, in Dublin, which is an absolute debacle, we have this lunacy that they're going to pump water out of Lough Derg into Dublin, where most of it will go back into the ground again in leaks. With 17,500 people homeless. I can remember the outcry, which was 10,000.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Our tourist sector is totally decimated because of, in my opinion, again, immigration. I would ask people to hear me out. We have a huge immigration problem, whether we like it or not. And I don't think we have a government or we have ministers who are capable of actually taking the bull by the horns and doing something about it. We have a mental health crisis in this country. You have a young girl there like Cara Dermody, who's a fantastic young girl, who should be enjoying her prime of her life, campaigning for autism. They flew a kite there only a couple of weeks ago, for instance, about cutting back on SNAs in the schools.
Special schools, yeah.
You spoke to an agricultural contractor during the week about the farming sector. Farmers are facing a very, very, very tough year. Earlier this week, elderly people had phoned into Leanne there and they spoke about sitting in the dark, afraid to put on their heating, but not afraid to put on their lights. The chairman for this, another bit of lunacy that they've come up with, is to build a Metrolink from Dublin City Centre to the airport. Well, the chairman of that, Metrolink, resigned yesterday. That kind of went under the radar.
He's making their stamps today, yeah. His salary was, about $500,000, I think.
$500,000 or something a year, Fran. And when you look at, in all that, Fran, where are our government, by the way? They're on holidays. Like, there's nobody running the ship.
They're having their Easter break.
Their Easter recess. Now, I mean, we'll just say if there was a crisis below in Tipp FM or here where I'm working, senior management would be working night and day to steady the ship and to keep it going and to solve problems, whatever. But our crowd, you see, Fran, in this country, right, we vote for people. First of all, half of us vote. 50% of people don't bother their arse voting. We vote people based on personality. Actually, he's a great man for the parish or whatever it is. Nobody is elected in this country based on ability. And you just look at Simon Harris. Simon Harris is the second in command in this country. He is the Minister for Finance. Now, I work in accounts payable, right? I have X amount that I'm trusted to do, X amount that I've been trained to do, and that I'm capable of doing. Will I ever see today, for instance, that I would be a financial controller here? No, not a hope in bloody hell. Because I wouldn't be good enough, I wouldn't have the abilities. The likes of Simon Harris get elected into the Dáil, and next thing they're made Minister for Finance. Based on what abilities, what track record has he got to have such a senior cabinet post?
Well, I kind of asked him about that, and he pointed to his experience in government and holding many other portfolios over the years.
That's not enough. That's not enough. Look at our Minister for Foreign Affairs, Helen McEntee. Now, Helen McEntee is a thoroughly decent person, okay? I'd safely say she's a young woman, a young mother, and absolutely, I said the girl hasn't a bad bone in her body. What qualifications has she to do foreign affairs? Do you know she was in Ukraine or something during the week? Don't ask me why. But, what are they? They're swanning around. Even Michael O'Leary said it during the week. They seem to be swanning around solving other people's problems.
Well, she was meant to be in Lebanon today, but they cancelled it because of security risks. So
what? Micheál Martin's a school teacher. I watched a programme now, myself and one of my claims to fame, our Minister for Health, Jennifer. Jennifer is the only person that blocked me on Twitter ever. A couple of years ago, she was going to be on the Tonight Show on Television 3 or whatever they call it. And they put up a blurb during the day, same as you do yourselves, putting up a blurb of what they were going to talk about that night and who their guests were. And I just happened to tweet on it. I said that the minute I see Jennifer and these things, I just switch off. But she banned me from her Twitter page for saying that. But anyway, I can get over it. But she was asked the other day, this is our Minister for Health, and watch the interview. It's online. And she was asked, with 26 billion being put into health in this country, for a country now with pretty much just around half the population of London, how come a family in Carlow have to crowdfund for scoliosis treatment for a child? And just watch her face, Fran. This cold, really so out of her depth, hasn't got a clue what to say. And they rattled out the usual old spiel then, and just BS that only the party faithful will accept. Only the party faithful will they stand around them. Like there was a video of Simon Harris the other night with all these people standing around them, and they was nodding their heads, And if that was a parent, if that was my parent, I can guarantee you, if that was me, we have a young fella at home, and he'd be calling me and say, "Listen, will you stop making a fool of this, please?" But
you see, I'm still waiting. I'm still waiting for you to get to the part where you're feeling sorry for the. Do you feel sorry because of their inability and
totally
right? Okay,
utterly. You asked them the other morning, for instance, about the cut and excise.
Yeah,
and they rabbit out this old BS again that it's to pay for retrofitting. Now, in my house at home, I changed my windows last year. I got new windows put in. If I had waited until this year, of course, I would have gotten a grant of 40%, but that's not here nor there. To bring our house up to the standard that they want, it would cost about 40,000 quid more. I'd have to pay about 25,000. I would see €1,000 every year then of a payback. So it would take 25 years before I would actually see a return on that. I'd be 86 then, before I see a return. Any young couple or young family who have bought a house and struggling with a mortgage, they're having enough trouble just flipping living, let alone spending money on retrofitting. But what I'm trying to say is, Fran, that these people, they're told by the spin doctors, like you're talking to Fran Curry on Monday morning, right? Here's what he's going to say. Here's what you say when he asks you. Here's what you say. They're well briefed. They're told what to say even before they go on with yourself or go on Radio Air and whatever it is. And we just have these people, as I said, they're told what to say. None of the decisions being made are their decisions because they wouldn't be capable of making these decisions. And what I'm really saying is that we need... Michael O'Leary was interviewed during the week, and he spoke about the passenger cap at Dublin Airport, for instance, that they said was part of their campaign manifesto, that a government thing that they would, programme for government, that they would lift the passenger cap. It still hasn't been done. And here's one of the most successful companies in the country, and screaming for this thing, for action to be taken. Nothing is done. And he calls them what they're doing nothing Taoiseach.
But what is the... I was looking at the I think it was Colette Fitzpatrick conducted that interview, and it's well worth a watch back if anybody hasn't seen. the alternative is what, though? I mean, this is democracy. I mean, you look across to the UK, and it's such an inept bunch of yokes there in that Labour government. So democracy, it throws up people who were often maybe not all that capable. But
you had a man on with you there a couple of years ago, and he spoke about this very, very situation, and he spoke about trying to attract a better calibre of people into politics. You were going to pay them better. And I remember at the time it was mad.
Yeah.
People were going mad because. But I mean, I can't remember the man's name, but he was brilliant, and he was right that what you need, the days of electing somebody because he's down the road, or you're a great man for the parish and all this. This is a changing world. As I said, I'm able to play a couple of chords on a guitar. Could I walk out in the Three Arena in Dublin and in front of 10,000 people? I'd fall down in weakness with fright. I wouldn't be capable of doing it. But you get elected into government, and if you're well in with the leadership, whatever it is, you probably get one of the big jobs, like maybe finance or health or whatever it is, justice, foreign affairs. It's jobs for the boys. And that doesn't cut it anymore. So when these people then find out, and they're found out, such as, for instance, at the moment with the chaos that's going on in the world, and with energy crisis and with all this stuff, they're totally so far out of their depth. And again, finally, after 10 minutes, that's why I just actually feel sorry for them, because they are standing there,
right.
They don't know what to do.
But are you of the opinion that it's the permanent government then? It's the civil service that are the real decision makers, the real policy makers?
Yes, because I mean, how can they come out, for instance, and talk about this retrofitting thing, like when most people in the country have just trouble buying their shopping at the weekend or paying an ESB bill? It's the same.
Just when I asked him about, was it possible to look at the carbon tax? That's what he threw at me. That well, that's fine, but the carbon tax is funding the retrofitting and
but there was one from on the Tonight Show during the week, and the same question when it's asked, the same answer for every single one of them, Fran, because they're briefed on what to say. And as I said, like, it would cost me 40,000 and I would pay about 25,000. I would be 86 before I see a return on that. I probably wouldn't even live to see that anyway. But this is the stuff that, and this is what we're putting up with. This is what we're listening to every single day of the week. But
again, what is the alternative?
There isn't.
Yeah, okay.
Unless we attract a high calibre of people into politics, and it won't happen in my lifetime.
Right, but the guy you spoke about there with Metrolink, Sean Sweeney, I think was his name, he was being paid €550,000 a year. So obviously, I think he was from New Zealand, if memory serves me correct.
He's New Zealand, I think,
So are you talking about getting people of this calibre, even though he doesn't seem to have done much good for Metrolink? But so what exactly do you mean then?
Because this isn't going to happen overnight, obviously. But to get people, I think myself, the likes of this guy come into a thing like Metrolink, which, let's face it, probably won't happen anyway. But they come in, and I actually think that they look around, and all they'll see in this country is ineptitude. They'll see planning. They'll see stuff like Michael O'Leary spoke the other night, like about people giving out about the noise in Dublin Airport, for instance, that moved there in 1998.
Yes, yeah.
The airport was there since 1940. You'll have every single, no matter what people say, somebody will be complaining about it. And I think people come into this country from these other places, and they just look around and go, "Oh Jesus, this isn't for me. Good luck, lads. I'm gone." Like, I'm going to Milan in a couple of months' time. And I was looking at hotels last night in the centre of Milan. And, for instance, a hotel about 170, 200 euros in the centre of Milan, right beside the Duomo Cathedral. We're going to Galway for a nice to do a cycle in June. And 2 nights in Galway, 600 euros.
Oh, wow.
So we have, but this is the thing, we were talking about price gouging.
Yeah.
This is it seems to be the Irish way, but that's just killing a tourism section. But we have nobody with the ability to come in here and grab the bull by the horns do something about it. We just haven't got that level of person that's needed.
Paul, I must leave it there, but
by the way, Fran, before you go, I just wanted to congratulate you on your chat with Shay Fife the other morning. It was absolutely brilliant.
Oh, thanks very much indeed.
Really enjoyed it.
Thanks, Paul.
So, anyway, listen, Fran, have a great Easter.
You
and your family
too.
and everyone.
Thanks, Paul. Look after yourself. That's Paul Lafford there. News and information is coming up.
Tip FM's Tip Today.
With Slattery's Garage, Puck On. Main Peugeot dealers in the Premier County. And now stocking the full range of the luxury French car brand DS Automobiles. Book your test drive today with Slattery's Garage, Puck On. See Slattery's.
Frequent. Highs today of 9 to 14 Celsius. It's currently 12 degrees in Tipp Town. That's your update for now. You can get more local stories on the Tipp FM app or at tippfm.com.
Tip FM's Tip Today.
With Slattery's Garage, Puck On. Over half a century driving the people of Tipperary and surrounding areas with quality, reliable and economical vehicles, new and used. Call the sales team today to discuss your next car or van on 067 24 111.
Thanks, Pat. Welcome back to the second hour of Tip Today. Stephen is with me. Morning to you, Stephen.
Morning, Fran.
People inquiring about Johnny Luby being absent without leave this morning, but there's a good reason, isn't there?
Absolutely. Johnny had a family commitment today, but he will be back, of course, very soon on the airwaves, and a couple of people ringing in as well to know where is Johnny. So he will be back presently, but a family commitment today.
He will indeed. All right, you're getting lots of stuff in, aren't you?
Oh, absolutely. The phone hasn't stopped going, Fran, there across the morning. Had a good few different callers. Jimmy from Urlingford is a farmer, and he phoned about the cost of diesel and how the government need to reduce their tax intake, as a lot of the money from diesel is going to the government and not those transporting from the Middle East, so that's something that can be controlled, is what he was saying. Relating to your conversation with Paul there that you had before the break, caller said that the cost of medicine has gone up and the availability of medicine could go short, and that's going to be a huge problem, because it'll mean that the cost will go higher again, and syringes, tablets, they all need oil in their production, so that could be affected as well. And another caller was saying that pubs are empty, and he didn't blame it on Lent. He said that it's the cost of a night out between drink and the cost of getting a taxi, and if you get one, they're very hard to get even, so they're fewer as well. So he felt that the way that people socialise is changing, and he wanted to make that point, that people are on their phones all the time. Gyms seem to be a big thing, and he said that the disposable income has gone down, but again, you could tie that back as well to the cost of diesel and people's income going down across the economy. And another caller in, Fran, then a former Greyhound owner who was relating to the conversation earlier in the week as well, and he said by all means keep going to the Greyhound owners, but that the government shouldn't be giving it 100 million. And he said he wasn't sure the exact figure, but that's a general sum that he presented. He said he was a Greyhound owner for years and years, but he said you have to reflect now that there was 17,500 owners 10 years ago. Now there's less than 7,000. So why is there such a big reduction?
In fairness, I think the number is 20 million. I think it's 20 million, yeah.
And another point that he made there was just about the prohibitive substances and dealing with traceability, and that's something that has to be addressed, and also coursing and how that could change now, and he feels it's inevitable following the changes in the UK as well.
All right, thanks for that, Stephen. If you want to talk to Stephen, it's a free phone number, 1800 938 007. I'm joined now by health insurance expert Dermot Good of Health Insurance Ireland. Good morning to you, Dermot.
Good morning, Fran.
Yeah, thanks for coming on with us today. I was reading some of that research from the Health Insurance Authority. The vast majority of people with private health insurance, Dermot, have never switched provider or plan, despite rising prices and the potential for significant savings, as you've often told us about, when shopping around. We're not inclined to change.
Yeah, I have to say we were quite surprised at those statistics, because I suppose it wasn't really what we're seeing on the ground. Now, do you know what, Fran? Whether we agree with the statistics or not, I mean, look, there's a definite call out from that research to all consumers that we need to get much better at, I suppose, challenging the health insurers to give us a better deal. And I think, there's a couple of things about the research. So I'm not sure about the number of people who might not switch insurer, but they could switch plan. And also, what the research doesn't really refer to is company schemes or group schemes, which make up about half the market. So I definitely think, and actually from the 1st of April, I think there's going to be a huge amount more now shopping around because, as your listeners probably know, apart from the rate increases, there have been huge benefit reductions from the 1st of April, particularly impacting Leia members. And that research is only up, I think, until the end of last year. So, look, but definitely there's a wake-up call here now to all consumers. You need to stop letting your health insurance cover roll over without challenging the insurance companies to give you a better deal. Because, Fran, if you do that, and I know there's a lot of maybe older people listening who are terrified of making any changes to their cover, but if you let your cover roll over now, there's a strong risk that you'll actually roll over with less cover but pay more for less cover because the insurance companies are revising their benefits all the time. So in other words, if you don't phone up and even just check to make sure there's been no change to my existing cover, you could find yourself with less benefits. And if I give you one very specific example, there's a plan with Leia called Prosper Advanced that I think I would have recommended on your programme a number of times because it was amazing cover up to the end of March. And that plan fully covered hip replacements and knee and shoulder replacements. From the 1st of April, Leia have put a 40% shortfall on that plan for all those orthopaedic and ophthalmic procedures. That now means if Dermot Good needs to have let's just say a hip replacement in the Galway Clinic or the Bonds in Limerick or whatever, I'm facing a potential shortfall of €6,000.
Wow.
And Fran, the worst thing is that plan went up in price in January. So it's not like the cost of the cover is coming down to reflect reducing benefits. So there's a real wake-up call. And by the way, Leia have another 30 plans where they wrote out to thousands of members saying your current shortfall, which was 20% for those procedures, is now 40%. So really now the days of letting your cover roll over and hoping or assuming that I have the same. A lot of people mistakenly believe because I'm paying more money, sure, I have to have the same cover. Fran, you can't make that assumption anymore. And I'd say now to any maybe younger members listening, it's your parents and your older family members that are on those really expensive plans, and they probably, and you'll know this, they probably need that full orthopedic cover. They need to be very careful and read the small print because if they don't read it and if they miss that, they could find themselves renewing on inferior cover and then find themselves with big shortfalls. But once again, going back to your question on the research, no real surprises for us in that except that not enough people are shopping around just like they would car and home insurance. And if I can make one point as well on this, Fran, people sometimes will say, well, I feel loyal to my, there's a loyalty factor. And I understand that, but there is no such thing as loyalty in health insurance. They cannot reward you for staying with them for 5, 10, 15 years because the law prohibits it. So really, you should always try and get the best deal from your current provider. But if they don't have that deal, do not be afraid to shop around. The legislation is so protective, there'll be no break in your cover whatsoever.
And Dermot, people that are particularly careful are people that might have come through a cancer journey, for example, along with their health insurers. They're particularly careful about changing, are they not?
They are, and Fran, they should be, right? And what I would say to anybody now who has an existing underlying condition, whatever that might be, if you get your renewal notice in, the first thing you do is you phone your health insurance company and you simply say, right, are there any changes to my benefits whatsoever, right? And they have to explain that to you. Like reading through the documentation to try and identify the changes is torturous, right? So phone them up and have them explain that to you. Now, if you're thinking of switching to another provider, if you can't get a good deal with the current insurance company, when you're speaking to the other insurance company, you simply tell them exactly what those underlying conditions are. So if you're going to a particular hospital, seeing a certain consultant, if you're getting regular MRI scans, or maybe you're getting regular infusions or chemotherapy, or you're on certain immunotherapies or drug therapies, disclose everything, tell them everything. And that insurance company has to then tell you on the phone whether you will be covered under their plan or not. And just to reassure all your listeners, they must take you on. They must give you a cover with no break-in cover whatsoever. So they can't turn around and go, well, Dermot, we're not going to cover that condition because you've told us you have it. They're not allowed to do that by law. It's just to make sure the other plan that you're considering, excuse me, gives you the cover that you need. So the key thing is on the phone, disclose everything, check everything, and they in turn have to confirm what is or what isn't covered. And the people who do that, Fran, they get the best deals. I mean, you don't necessarily need advice. You don't necessarily need to be using these comparison websites. If you engage with your current insurer, and if I can give all of your listeners one question that they should be put into the insurance companies, when the renewal comes in, phone up your existing insurer and sit back, simply tell them it's too expensive. I want you to check all of your plans now and see if you have something similar to my current plan with similar benefits that's cheaper. And don't be afraid to tell them what you can afford, what your budget is. And then, you sit back and let them go through their 150 plans then to see what they have. And whatever they come back with, once again, get them to explain exactly what the differences are. But here's another wake-up call to your listeners. Anybody who's on the same plan for maybe 5 or even 10 years or more, I guarantee you there's other plans there, probably from the same insurance company, with better cover, cheaper. But if you don't phone up and interrogate them, you're going to miss those deals completely.
And if you're prepared to pay the same amount of money, Dermot, but want more for your money, I mean, should they be able to explain that to you as well?
Absolutely. And look, once again, before you phone the insurance companies, just be very clear on what you're looking for. So a lot of people now that I would speak to, like I'd probably spend half an hour discussing people's requirements with them before I know any plan or recommend any plan, because it's a filtering process. As people tell you what the requirements are, then you filter out the plans that don't suit them. But if it's not about the money, a lot of people will say to me it's about the quality or the adequacy of the cover. So people will say, look, I'm paying €2,500. I just want to make sure I'm getting the best, I suppose, bang for my buck. So tell them that I have €2,500 to spend. I want the best plan for that amount of money. And it's an awful shame what Leah did with that plan, the Prosper Advance, because Fran, at 2,564, it was fantastic cover. But here's a couple of tips for your listeners now, and we focus just on Leah. Now, by the way, Leah are not the only ones, but they're the ones who have just done this from the 1st of April. They're all doing it and have been doing it incrementally. But anybody who, for example, is on the Inspire Plus, Simply Health Extra schemes with Leah, you now have a 40% shortfall on the hips and knees. If you phone up Leah and ask for a different plan called Connect Simplicity, that plan still only has a 20% shortfall, and it's the same price as the plans I just mentioned. And anybody, let's just say, who's on the Prosper Advance scheme, who wants to keep, all the other benefits that are on that plan, but they don't want 40% shortfall, they'll take 20%. There's another plan, Fran, with Leah called 360 Care Select at €2,300, which is phenomenal cover, And by the way, some of your listeners now will think, I'm too late. The 1st of April is gone. I paid my money. I've let it go. I'm caught out. No, you're not. You have a 14-day cooling off period. It doesn't matter if you've already given your decision to Leah or paid them money. You have until the 14th of April to review everything, change everything, and make whatever changes, and they will give you a refund as well. So just be mindful of that. People still have nearly another 2 weeks, but you must engage with the insurance companies to get those better deals.
We hear every day from people who are struggling with the cost of living. I mean, really, really badly struggling, and they might be struggling to pay their health insurance. What would you say to them at this point?
Yeah, so look, and this is definitely coming true. So I would say to anybody now who's finding the cost prohibitive, and with all the increases, this is just going to be a feature of the market now. Affordability is already an issue. So there's numerous tactics, Fran, that everybody can employ here. So for example, families, look at splitting your cover. You do not need to have everybody on the same plan, and there are deals right now where you get your children insured for free. Take on a small excess on your policy, or if you have a small excess, look at increasing the excess. If you're covered for private accommodation, look at semi-private accommodation. If you're on the same plan for 3 years or more, I guarantee you're overspending, and you need to look at the newer plans that have just come out. And let me just give your listeners an example now, Fran. The best value mid-level schemes in the market right now. So Leah have the Access Health, which is $1,089. Level Health have Plan B 300, which is $1,070. And then VHI have the Enhanced Care 350, which basically is €1,209. And then Irish Life Health have the My Plan 350, which is about €1,200 as well. So they're the really good mid-level schemes. So if anybody is paying €1,600 per adult for a mid-level plan, they need to look at the ones I just mentioned, because they could save themselves hundreds of euro and still stay in the system. But there's numerous tactics, and look, there's loads of brokers or even the insurance companies, when you phone them, there's numerous tactics to reduce your costs. And I suppose for some people who maybe have already employed those tactics, they may have no option now but to look at cancelling their cover. And that's really unfortunate. So I would suggest they check out every other cost reduction tactic first of all before they cancel their cover. Because unfortunately, Fran, if you cancel, and if you're over 34, you're looking at age loadings, but you're also looking at those waiting periods and having to serve them all over again. So
yes.
I would just suggest anybody who's under pressure, talk to your insurance company, get advice before you start removing people from the cover or cancelling the cover outright.
And if you are in such a bad situation that you cancel, my understanding is if you pick it up at another stage, you don't get any benefit from your previous spend with
No,
them.
you don't. So, Fran, here's the way it works. And once again, there is a thing in the legislation that says if you let your cover lapse, you have 13 weeks. That if you reinstate the cover within that 13-week period, not with any insurance company, not just with your current insurer, then you don't have to reserve the waiting periods. But unfortunately, health insurance in this country is very black and white. If Dermot Good cancels and it goes beyond 13 weeks, I will be considered a brand new member all over again. All my previous credit is wiped and I have to start from scratch again. Now, if anybody is, one thing I would say to everybody, and this is where the insurance companies, I have to say, are very reasonable. If you're mid-year with your cover and you're finding the premiums unaffordable, pick up the phone to your insurance company and tell them that, because they all now have policies, in fairness to them, for what they call vulnerable customers. And if somebody is really struggling with the cost of the premium, just phone them up and tell them what you can afford. And in fairness, I find them very good. They will try and see if there's other things they can put in place to basically help you reduce the cost. One tip, Fran, if I may, for anybody with Leia who has a family, and if you renewed 3 or 4 months back and you're paying for each of your 3 or 4 children, phone up Leia today. And for the second, third and fourth child under 18, ask for a plan called Flex 125 Choice, and that plan is free for the second, third and fourth child under 18. So there's lots of different things that you can potentially do to bring that cost down and hopefully keep the cost affordable.
Very good. If people want to find out more about what you do and your team does, Dermot, how can they do that best?
Yeah, so look, all the information on the best deals is on the website, the Health Insurance Ireland website. So look, hopefully there's information there. And I've tried to, there's a section for best deals. People can click on that. And what I try and do every week is just show people what the best deals are in different categories. So hopefully that's of help. But you know what, Fran, I'd say to anybody right now, look, block out 20 minutes to half an hour, strong mug of coffee, phone your existing insurance company and just challenge them to offer you or find you a better deal. And if you haven't reviewed your cover in years, you will be shocked sometimes at what they will offer you. But the key thing is to phone them, keep them on the phone, tell them everything, check everything, and don't be afraid to disclose your budget. But don't let your cover roll over anymore, because as I say, as well as paying an extra 20%, you could find yourself with less cover, and that's not a position you want to find yourself in.
Dermot, great to talk to you, and thanks for your time this morning. Thank you. Good morning to you. That's Dermot Good speaking to us there, Dermot of Health Insurance Ireland. 1800 938 007.
Tipp FM's Tip Today.
With Slattery's Garage, puck on. It's time to change. Test drive the award-winning range of Peugeot hybrids and fully electric vehicles at Slattery's Garage today. See slatterysgarage.ie.
I used your toilet, yes.
Tipp FM's Tip Today.
With Slattery's Garage, puck on. Main Peugeot dealers in the Premier County. And now stocking the full range of the luxury French car brand DS Automobiles. Book your test drive today with Slattery's Garage, puck on. See slatterysgarage.ie.
And you're very welcome back to Tip Today. Now, I was speaking to Nuala Donlan from Greyhound Action Ireland a couple of days ago. And she wants a total ban on greyhound racing. And more importantly, she would like the government to stop funding the industry. Well, following that, Claire got in touch with us because she's a third generation greyhound owner and joins me now. Good morning to you, Claire.
Good morning, Fran.
Good to talk to you today, Claire. Third generation of greyhounds.
Well, yeah, that's why I'm ringing, because I'd like to speak in favour of greyhounds and greyhound racing, just for myself and my friends in the sport and for my family, including all those that have gone before me, you know, because the dogs love racing, they really do. And they're such a positive energy source to be around. When you're around greyhounds, it has to be good for your mental health. It fills my cup. I heard you often speaking to people on the radio there about what fills your cup, what brings you joy. And for me and for a lot of people, it's greyhounds and going greyhound racing and spending time outside in the fresh air and caring for the greyhounds.
And you're saying the greyhounds themselves, that the greyhounds are happy as far as you're concerned, are they, Claire?
They really love racing and they're very well cared for. They have to be, Fran, because they're canine athletes and they can't perform if they're not looked after. And there is very good regulation. You know, to me, someone who's lived experience of breeding and owning and racing greyhounds, it's like absolutely nonsensical to argue banning racing, because it's the same as a well-meaning rescuer that would save a fish from drowning and put it in a tree. You know, that's the way it is to me.
And what about the bans in other countries? I'm thinking of Wales and Scotland, and there's already bans in New Zealand and Tasmania and the like as well. So,
well, I feel deeply for the people in Wales, especially because there was no racing in Scotland, and you know, they were banning something essentially that wasn't happening there for the last large number of years, and it was a political decision in Wales. I feel really sorry for them. But just come back to the point about defunding racing. Defunding racing won't improve welfare, and it won't improve the economy, far from it. You know,
explain that to me, Claire. What do you mean by that?
Well, it completely contradicts the argument that they care about regulation and welfare. You know, because like 10 million out of the 20 million is spent on welfare, rehoming and regulation. And the prize money, really, for the greyhound owners and breeders, it's nearly 100% spent back on the greyhounds for their welfare. So I think people need to see the agenda behind these activists. Like, they want to get greyhound racing banned so they can move on to horse racing and fishing and farming and zoos. You know, they're opposed to all of these items and they don't agree with them.
What did you make of some of the statistics that Nuala gave me based on information she got through Doyle questions? She said 7% of all the dogs put out to race on a racetrack in the past 2 years, for example, were dead before the end of the race.
Yeah, now, Fran, listen to me. Doesn't that sound like a wild statement? You know, what I have here is 99.63% of greyhounds raced were not injured. So, you know, I don't know. I think the media needs to push back on some of the things that are being said. The prime time the programme the other night, I thought was a little bit more balanced. They did show some of the good things in the industry, and to be fair, to their credit, I would say that. The only comment I will make is that they showed pups and things that are supposed to be wasted from the greyhound industry, and they weren't greyhounds. They definitely weren't. They were mixed breeds, lurchers and that, and there was no challenge about that. You know,
and the other thing she pointed out, since 2014, over 4,000 greyhounds have been injured while racing, and 1,593 have been killed. Do you dispute those stats? Do you?
I'm just giving you my lived experience.
Yeah, sure.
You know,
of course, yeah.
That we have a few greyhounds, and if I would see that there's a vet there every night at the track if anybody needs it, and the dogs race around, and it's completely transparent and it's legitimate. Anybody can go in and see it. It's not hidden. So you know, people can use their own eyes and go and see it. Could I just say as well that,
of course you can, yes,
what Nuala won't say is that there's great fundraising done, especially on the benefit nights. And millions of euros are raised for very good causes like charities and clubs and Flack Shoal and lots of different things.
So these are the positives of it. Do you agree? Well, I won't say do you agree with her, but she made the point that the industry is dying outside of those charitable events that you're making reference to there, in terms of attendance and the like. Is she making? Is that correct? I suppose is what I'm saying to you, Claire.
Fran, look, I'll just make the point that audiences have moved online really for a lot of activities, sports, and some of the time, especially during the daytime, the SIS, it's people just watch online. That's just the way audiences have moved. But I would say to you that all the big nights and the benefit nights, they're very, very well attended. I've been there to see them, and they're very, very well attended and very well supported. And that's just my experience. And I'm sure there's other people that will disagree with me.
Is it inevitable that at some stage down the road there will be a ban here, or that funding will be restricted in some way? Do you think that's inevitable when we look to other jurisdictions, Claire?
I don't know.
Do you not?
Okay. I don't know. I don't. I think that you can't make the argument for defunding it if you want good welfare, and they have very good welfare. They have gold standard welfare. You can't make the argument for defunding it.
I think Sinn Féin made the point that if you ban outright, you're going to drive this industry underground in some way. Would you go along with that, Claire?
Of course you will. And that's defunding anything isn't good for any sport or any organisation or any activity, you know. So you have to have regulations, and you have to spend money, and you have to have best practices. And like, don't forget, they have an agenda to get greyhound and horse racing banned. So they're going to, when you generate statistics, even though the statistic that I read out to you, there's 99.63% of greyhounds that were raced aren't injured. Like, they're still not going to be appeased. You know, they won't be appeased. They will stay targeting greyhound racing and horse racing and everything else, the zoos. They won't be happy because they just don't agree with it, and they have a different agenda, you know.
But do you think, are they entitled to that opinion?
They absolutely are entitled to it. And do you know what? It's good to have criticism because, we don't deserve to be without criticism. No sport deserves to be without criticism. You need criticism, but I have to say I don't really agree with the way they hassle and target people.
And have you, over the years, and as I say, you're third generation greyhound owner, have you seen cruelty? Have you seen dogs being treated badly?
Fran, only what I read on the newspaper and you'd hear, and it is a small world in the sense that.
But your own experience, I'm wondering about, Claire.
The people that are the most horrified by cruelty are the actual greyhound community. That's my experience. They're absolutely horrified by it, and by any cruelty to animals, because most of us are animal lovers. You know, you have to be around the dogs. And can I just say as well, like, that it's no wonder really sports people love greyhounds, because they are lovely dogs to be around, and they're so full of, you know, they have this attitude, let me at it. And, you know, at the end of the race, they shake off. If the dog knows, actually, if it hasn't gone, that's my opinion, you'd nearly know if the dog is disappointed. But by the time he's drinking the water afterwards, he's happy and wagging his tail, and he's saying, "Oh, I'm ready to go. Let me back." You know. So,
all right, Claire. Well, you make a very good argument there indeed, and we appreciate you coming on with us in rebuttal to Nuala as well, and her piece the other way. Good to talk to you. We wish you well, Claire. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye, Janelle. That's Claire Hanley speaking to us there. How do you feel about that? 1800 938 007. A listener saying, I think Claire is 100% correct in what she's saying where greyhound racing is concerned. It's a fantastic industry in rural Ireland. The benefit nights are fantastic and a great social outing. The animal rights people will never be happy until all sport involving animals is banned.
If it matters to you, it matters to us. Call Tipp today on 1800 938 007. Tip FM's Tip Today.
With Slattery's Garage Puck On. Now is the time to pick up your next van. From the award-winning Peugeot Partner van to the Expert and the load-lugging Boxer van. We have big vans, high-roof vans, long wheelbase vans. You'll find them all at Slattery's Garage Puck On. See slatterysgarage.ie.
Friday's Euro Millions jackpot is an estimated €85 million. And
now, musician Gay Brazel has been speaking to me over the last couple of months about the whole show band era and the ballroom days and all of that, and he joins me once again in studio. Good morning to you, Gay.
Morning, Fran.
It's good to see you today.
You too.
Of course, we all, when we all started out to play, we were all looking towards America. We all wanted to go to America and play in America and stuff. So with Tweed, you got to America.
Yeah, 1986, we were asked, would we do a 6-week residency in New York? And sure, of course, we said, would we what? So, but it was a bit like, you know, the old Irish saying, Fran, when you're on the pig's back, it is a different part of his anatomy you're actually, and the view isn't quite as nice. But anyway, no, I'm painting a bad picture before you. No, it was great. It was great. But yeah, in the lead up to it, the band was saying, right, we needed new press photos and stuff to go in advance and stuff. So the lad said, you need to freshen up the image, like you need to be doing things. And they said, Gay, would you consider sorting out the image a bit? And I said, well, what do you mean? I'm not wearing makeup now if you're going that way. I said, no, maybe get the hair, a different hairstyle or something. Oh, sure, I said, if it makes you happy, yeah. So I went to Noel Carroll, my regular barber. Hi, Noel, if you're listening, Carrick. And Noel said, yeah, you know what? He said, I think we'll do highlights. Highlights, I said. He means streaks in my hair. Basically, yeah. Oh, flip, I said, I don't know about that. So anyway, went ahead with it. The head burnt off me, tin foil and all this stuff. I don't know how the ladies put up with all this. But anyway, here was me and the head scorching, sitting, anyway, out the door finally. And I went up the main street and I went into, hoping I wouldn't meet anyone that I knew at this stage, went into Tony Cleary's, the news agent in the main street, get me Evening Herald. And this lady arrived alongside of me at the counter and knew her well from the main street, lived in the main street, lovely woman, bit of a character. Kitty Connolly. Well, Kitty, says I, silence. Paid for me paper anyway, and I said, maybe she didn't hear me. Kitty, I said hello to you. I don't speak to men who dye their hair. Well, I tell you, Fran, that was my balloon burst. And I said, I was tempted to go back down to him and say, can you do anything with this and dye the flipping thing out?
I hope there's photographs. We can have.
There's one somewhere.
So was this an attempt to make Tweed a boy band?
Well, it's a bit late for me. I was about 36 or 7, I suppose. Yeah. But we went to New York, and in fairness, it was a great 6 weeks. It was a gentleman from Mayo, Tom Brogan, that owned the Archway in the Bronx. Yeah. And he had been bringing over bands. He had been bringing Larry Cunningham and different bands. But the older ones that would have been into the kind of music that Larry was playing, they weren't going out anymore and they were getting older, I suppose. So there was an influx of young Irish girls and boys because employment wasn't great in Ireland.
So that was the
86.
86, all right, yeah.
And they were swarming into New York and they were eaten up with jobs, like there was great work, trades, Block Lane, you name it, everything, and they were making fantastic money. And of course they weren't legal, so they weren't able to show the money or whatever. Yeah. But they were having a ball over there. And
they were looking for entertainment.
And they were looking, and Tom's bands weren't really providing the entertainment they want. So one of his barmen said, I have the band for you. He said, Robbie Kearse was his name, from County Clare, singer himself. And he invited us out, and of course, Tom was dubious about this band. And he said, first night we arrived and we set up anyway, and I have a feeling you might blow the back wall out of it. I said, Tom, no, that won't happen. So he sat with a peaked hat on him, looking at us from a different. There was 2 sections in the bar, and anyway, we passed. I said, Tom, are we going home tomorrow? Are we staying? No, you're grand. You'll do the job. Now, the Archway Tavern was officially licensed by the New York City and Council Fire Department for a capacity of 193 people. Now, for the first few nights, I tell you one thing. We got our comeuppance because you do an hour and a half, you take a half hour off.
I remember well.
You do another hour. You probably played the Archway. Another half hour, and then you're off. So you played a total of 3.5 hours, tipping up towards 4 a.m. in the morning, which was closing
Tough
time.
work, isn't it?
Yeah.
Tough work.
Now, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday wouldn't be 2. You might get away with finishing at 3. But Saturday night, you'd be going right up to 5 to 4. And I tell you one thing, you'd know you were alive. But by the time we finished, the last Saturday we did, the place was heaving, but it was building up all the time because they were even coming from South Boston, the Irish and the Irish Americans. So
and were you essentially doing the same programme as you would do at home?
We were, because we were doing
program.
Guns N' Roses and stuff, and tipping into AC/DC and stuff at that time, and some of our own stuff. And sure, that was exactly what they left in Ireland when they flew.
Sure.
So that's what they wanted. By the last Saturday night, it was just the air conditioning went, and it was like a flipping. But I think there was about $5 in.
Yeah.
And there was the entrance door, but then there was 2 exit doors up at the back where we were playing in the bigger section. They were paying in their 5, and it was so hot. The girl in the cloakroom, Susan, told me, she said on the Sunday, she said, you know how many came in last night? She said. I said, well, I hate to guess. She said 920 people paid.
Wow.
Now, I'm not putting that all down to the band being brilliant, and it was all down to us. It wasn't. It was just we were providing what they wanted. And there wasn't too many places in New York that were doing the same at the time. So, sure, Tom said, yeah, you have to be back before the end of the year. We'll have you back. We said, yeah, great, sure, Tom. And we said, good luck. I think it was on an Easter Tuesday after the Easter weekend. And Colin Hughes and his band from Monaghan were coming out, a good band, to replace us. And I got a phone call about 7 days later from Tom to say, we're finished. And I said, what do you mean, Tom? He said, the police, the following Saturday, he said, the police came in and fire department, and they had chains and locks. And he was actually, him and his staff were told out, and they chained the doors.
Because of the overcrowding, was it?
See, we were across from the an American Army armory, which was mostly underground. There's a whole city underneath there, still is, with tanks and hundreds of soldiers. But anyway, they noticed that the cars were treble parked outside, and what was going on in this place over here. So it attracted the attention of officialdom.
Wow.
And that was the
And was he closed down completely?
He was, yeah. It took him... No, he was able to get back in. He had spare keys and he had stuff.
Yeah.
But he was finally able to operate his front bar. But he wasn't allowed... and he was checked every week. And he eventually got back to something, but not to the capacity that he had.
The way it was, yeah.
But we went back later and we played other places. We played in New York. That was the start of us going.
I used to play the Fireside Club. That wasn't too far from it.
Not far
as far as I remember. Yeah, it was a completely different way of entertaining, because of the 3 shows and the one night. It was just, you know. And if you were fond of a jar, as some of the people I know were,
and I had a few thirsty members too, and. Tom, the rule in New York was once a musician enters the building to set up his gear, let it be 6 o'clock in the evening, food and drink was free to him. And sure, that was like, man alive.
So the fellas didn't come home, or
and I eventually said to Tom, because one or two of the guys, they found kind of hard to wake up for the last set, the last hour, after doing 2.5 hours, and down to the basement, and you'd rest and maybe nod off. But anyway, there was one gentleman in particular. Anyway, I said, Tom, you have after making a big stick to beat yourself here with this. What do you mean? What do you mean? I said, is it possible that we can keep our brownie pints until the gig is over and no free drink for the band whilst we're on stage? Suits me. Well, I said, it suits us better now. And of course, there was a little bit of unhappiness, but it worked a treat. So Tom would tell the night porter, hey, when these guys are finished, throw them out whatever they want.
But that was 4 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, and then that was our relaxing time. We'd sit around playing poker. You know, just handy.
And did you meet other bands when you were out there? Other Irish bands or other bands?
Yeah, regular. We used to meet Tommy Flynn at the Concourse.
Oh, yeah.
Of course, Tommy went and didn't come back.
Yeah.
And he had his own very successful band there.
He did.
And
the New York Show Band, I think.
That's
We
right,
used to come across him on the cruises.
Yeah, great singer, great, fabulous entertainer, great fun man.
What was the hit he had with the...
Baby Blue.
Baby Blue.
Yeah. So that was, a different story. That was show business.
Sure. So you'd meet up with groups out there?
You'd meet up with, you would. And we became regular. I suppose a year or two after that, Tweed then evolved into the whole shebang, and it was a different thing. We were doing Celtic and
that must have been very successful out there.
It was,
playing that kind of stuff.
Yeah, sure. America then was when we went over the first time. We played a festival, and after that in the Catskill Mountains there, and huge marquee, a big festival still there. And after that, we were all over the place. We played all over America for 3 times a year.
Yeah.
And one tour we did, Fran, was 10 weeks long. It was just two tours that met in the middle.
Yes.
Dates kept being added on to the end of the first tour and onto the start of the beginning of the next tour. We eventually ended up with 3 days, and sure, there was no point in going home. But it was tough on the families at home, and sure, Edna's a saint now. She managed 4 kids.
But you don't realise how big America is until you do touring. And then you might look at the map and say, look, we only covered a relatively small area.
But we kind of played. We actually drove to St. Paul, Minneapolis for a 2-nighter. Drove from New York.
From New York?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Over kind of a 2-day period, and 2 days kind of.
But that's right
now,
across.
Ken was a great driver. Ken had great stamina. On the way home, I think we nearly did it non-stop. 12, 1,300 miles.
Did you ever think that, you'd stay and play music out there full time?
We could have, but it was just hard on young guys. Were getting engaged, and then the older slightly were missing confirmations and communions and family events, and it just wasn't going to work. But if we wanted it, we could.
But was there a good living to be made out there?
Fantastic, Fran. And the respect that the American people had for the Irish musicians was, they'd kill you with kindness.
But music in general, I remember Philip Donnelly telling me that he said the difference between Ireland and America was that in America a musician is treated on the same level as lawyers and surgeons and all of that, whereas they're treated here like there's a fellow who strums a guitar in the corner of the room.
Yeah.
You'd go along with that, Gay, would you?
I would, Fran, I would. And then it was kind of hard to us to adjust back to the Irish way again, and continue gigging here and then back again for another tour and stuff. It was difficult, but sure, look, we were younger. And
of course, the other bonus, I suppose, of working in America, and I know you benefited from it big time, is that you could come across some marvellous instruments out there, couldn't you?
Man.
That you would never get hold of here. Yeah.
Stop, and you'd have a lovely new Telecaster or something walking back through the green zone in Shannon with a big smile on your face. Actually, there was never a bother because we had tons of instruments going with us and coming back, so it was just another one. But it was. It was a great time. We used to be down 48th Street.
Yeah, the wonder of going into those big stores.
Oh man, it was unreal. We never saw anything like it. I know when I stepped out of a subway train from the archway down to, say, Times Square, and I came up the steps, and I looked up, and as far as my head could go back, I could still not see the top of some of the buildings, like the Empire State and lots more. And sure, I know we really did enjoy it. We made great contacts. We could have stayed. No problem.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Some of the bands going over there, I'm not sure were they ready for the scene over there.
No.
Yeah.
They weren't, no, really. And that's why when, with the whole shebang, it was much more suitable to the American Irish.
Yeah, because I remember seeing some of the country bands. I did all those festivals as well, all the usual ones. And you see some of the country bands that were going over to America with country music. And at that particular time, it didn't work. Now, I know Daniel became a huge success there afterwards.
Different with an older age group,
But it just didn't work. They wanted the more Celtic, more folky stuff.
Of course they did, Fran. And we had a kind of a rockier end to the Irish music then as well, and we're writing our own stuff as well. And Pete St. John was writing for us as well with the whole shebang. And Pete even came on tour with us once in America. He stayed for a fortnight. Wow. So the poor devil, he wasn't in great health at the time, but he thoroughly enjoyed it. And he was brilliant in theatre. Like if you did a concert,
great storyteller.
He'd have everyone in the palm of his hand. He was fantastic.
That's great. Lovely guy. Do you look back on some of those years as highlights?
I suppose as I filter back through the old videos of the mind, and I say, they were good times. Yeah.
I spoke to Shay Fife of Lucky Numbers.
So I believe,
a few days ago as well.
That,
Interesting conversation because they were the poppier end.
They were,
I suppose, of the show band, the latter years of the show band. Yeah,
I believe he has a good single out. Dave Ellis was telling me. Yeah.
And of course, the other thing, and again I put this to him, is showband musicians don't go away. They keep recording for as long as they can and keep playing. Yeah.
They do. You know, the old joke, Harry Doherty, God be good to him, said, old musicians don't die, Gate, they just decompose.
It's a lovely line, isn't it? Yeah. What about the backyard band? What are you doing?
We're rehearsing yesterday, all guys in great form. And thoroughly enjoying it, and we're in Youghal in JD's next Saturday. We'd be gigging this weekend, but the boys are here, there and everywhere and enjoying life as they should, I suppose.
Absolutely. Well, that's for sure. Of course,
anyone else of our age bracket would be fishing or playing golf or walking the dog in the park, but there's none of that for us.
Well, I'm delighted to hear that there's not, because I'm delighted to hear you're all still playing and still doing a great job as well. Gay, great to see you with some more of our show band tales. Thanks.
Tipp FM's Tip Today.
With Slattery's Garage, Puck On. Over half a century driving the people of Tipperary and surrounding areas with quality, reliable and economical vehicles, new and used. Call the sales team today to discuss your next car or van on 067 24 111.
Thanks, Matt. Welcome back to the final hour of Tip Today. Just as he was going out the door, Gay Brazel said to me, will you mention Nellie Kelly? And Nellie Kelly is from Carrick-on-Shore, and she's a mutual friend of ours because she's a great lady to turn up at gigs, and we're all very fond of her. So hello to Nellie Kelly, and he just didn't have time to mention you during the slot this morning, Nellie, but I hope all is well with you. It's time for our Friday panel. Glad to be joined in the studio by Colette Roach, who's Fianna Fáil constituency organiser for South Tipp. Carol Clancy is with us, columnist, regular contributor to the show, and Joe Leahy has been contributing to Tipp Today for about 150 years at this point, founder of Seesaw and security consultant as well. You're all very welcome, and thanks for coming into us today. We have some items we want to get through, but can I just talk to you, because Colette, you were saying to me about old traditions around Easter time and Good Friday and stuff, and some memories coming back to you?
Oh, definitely, and especially around Good Friday. I can remember I was saying to you about Lent. My grandmother used to weigh everything at Lent, especially her tea. I can remember her weighing out her tea leaves, all through Lent. And then during Holy Week, she would, I think there was some statues she'd put away, she'd a statue of the Sacred Heart, that'd be put away for Holy Week. And I remember her bringing me down to the church on Good Friday, and they used to close, there was kind of a curtain over, there's a kind of a mosaic of Christ the King, that used to be covered.
Yes.
And the statues of Calvary, they were covered. But I remember her going down, she used to kneel on her 2 knees. And like, this is a woman now in her 80s. And she used to kneel down on her 2 knees and kneel there for 5 minutes. On Good Friday. So I just remember, just those particular things,
So you've been weighing out your tea, Colette, have you, for the past?
Not quite, no.
Carol, does it bring memories back to you, Carol? Does it?
Oh, Lord. I was an altar boy. And I always
can see that. I can see that, Carol. Yeah.
I always remember the Lenten novenas and getting up at 5:30 in the morning for a 6 o'clock mass. And like yourself, it was always the stalwarts. It was those grannies who were there for a 6 o'clock in the morning mass. I thought they were mad. I think I probably still think they were mad.
Well, it was very important to them. It
was central to their faith and their routine and everything else. But they were there at 6 o'clock, 5 days a week.
Isn't it amazing altogether?
They were a lot more present than I was when I was doing it.
Well, so they told me, in fact, yeah. Joe, what about you? Does it bring you back memories?
Sure it does, Fran. I suppose the one thing I remember, I suppose, about it, when you're living in the country and born and reared there, you wouldn't have access now to fish or anything like that, but there was definitely no meat, so you ended up with the potatoes and the butter and a couple of fried eggs.
You wouldn't have the fish.
Well, you wouldn't have the access to it, or you wouldn't have, but except you got a bit of it down the river where you shouldn't have been in the first place. So if you were lucky enough for that, you'd be fine. But if you weren't, then to be a couple of fried eggs, and that was the order of the day, and that's the way it went. Which were great times. They were all different.
Isn't it all amazing indeed? All right, we move on to the topics we've set out then, because earlier on this month, both the Scottish and Welsh Parliaments announced bans on greyhound racing. The Minister for Agriculture, Martin Hayden, he said that the Irish government has no plans to follow suit, and I spoke to Nuala Donlan from Greyhound Action Ireland, and she said that funding should be cut here, and she said it's time for a ban. And we spoke then earlier on this morning to Claire Hanley, who's a greyhound owner, and her family has been looking after greyhounds for 3 generations at this point, and she was making the opposing argument, and that they look after their dogs. The dogs are happy, and she thinks the tradition should continue on. Can I start with you? Greyhound racing, how do you feel about it?
Well, I think in general, Fran, animal welfare in Ireland is a big problem. Not just with greyhounds, but I think in general with animal welfare we have issues. Like, there is animal welfare acts. We'll say there's a dog welfare act and a horse welfare act, but I don't think there's, especially for dogs, I don't think there's adequate policing for it. So there's not enough dog wardens. The wardens themselves don't really have enough power in the legislation that they have to go in for, say, search and seizure. So when you see any of the big seizures around puppy farms, they're big operations because they have to bring in Gardaí and they have to have a big operation. There's massive manpower goes into it. Puppy farms are completely unregulated. You have people paying out fortunes for puppies that have no traceability, and then there's no accountability back to the people that are selling them afterwards. I'm not saying all of them. There's some very legitimate people out there doing it, but it is a very unregulated area. In relation to greyhounds, just on a personal level, I don't believe a full ban is warranted on it. There is legislation there, and there has been a lot done in the last few years around, say, breeding and drug testing. But I think, that's not to say, I think there's more legislation needed around, say, the retirement of greyhounds and what happens to them around the breeding of it and what happens to the animals that are no longer in use. So I think we need more areas, say, from birth to death of the animal.
Does it deserve 20 million from taxpayers?
It is a very big economic driver in areas, and I know that lady was saying the other day that there is a decline in numbers, but I think that there is, with the bigger areas, say like Shelburne Park, Thurles, Cork, Dublin, there's big business going into those. There is still a lot of people that are going to it, so there is an appetite there for it.
So you think it deserves 20 million, and that should continue on?
I'm not sure about the number. I wouldn't know enough about what it goes into for that number, but I do think that other sporting agencies do get help. So the fact that it's such an economic driver, I do think there is some funding. Is there any harm looking at the number? No, there isn't.
Right. Even though Nuala Donald was disputing, I suppose, the effect it has economically on communities. And like, Carl, where do you stand on it?
Well, I put on another hat. I grew up raising greyhounds. We had greyhounds in Winegap and Kilkenny in the 70s. Very different landscape then to what you would have had now. Greyhounds are tracked now from cradle to grave. My sister still breeds and runs greyhounds, and she would tell you that their welfare is kind of mandatory at this stage, that they are tracked. Can you do more? Well, every industry needs to wash its own face. So if 20 million is being put in, it has to be put into development, not maintenance, so that you, over time, can remove those supports.
Well, seemingly it supports owners, trainers, breeders, that kind of thing, and publicity for the dogs and one thing and another.
Yes, so the industry should be able to do that for itself if it's a viable industry. If it's not a viable industry, then maybe it's just a hobby, and maybe that you take it into a hobby realm the same way as you would crufts, where you don't necessarily come out of it making a profit or looking to make a profit.
Yeah, but a lot of people making a living out of this.
They are. They're breeding and selling, but from racing, very little actual prize money is on offer. You mentioned Thurles Greyhound Track. I listened to somebody say that not so long ago there were 3 people at a meet at Thurles Greyhound Track, a midweek meet.
Wow.
So the idea that it's washing its own face just doesn't stand up.
Right, even though Claire made an interesting point that when you attach the racing to charities and fundraisers, huge attendance. And
absolutely.
People have a great night and they enjoy the social aspect.
If you have dogs that are well taken care of, you have dogs that are natural runners. Greyhounds are natural sighthounds. They want to run. And you have an industry that's capable of doing that. Yes. Then fine. But when you don't have an industry that's capable of standing on its own 2 feet by itself, then it's hard to justify pumping millions into it that could be used for other purposes.
A few people on to say the ordinary taxpayer is not paying the 20 million to greyhounds. It's a tax taken from the betting levy. If you don't bet, you don't pay. That's not true, actually, because that was said to us a few times over the last couple of days, and I had a look at it, and it's not. The tax levy on betting goes into the coffers, the general government's coffers, and the 20 million is paid just paid out. So the levy is going towards several different things. Joe, greyhound racing.
Yeah, I think I really do, Fran, think that is regulated enough. I think it's there, like any sport that's out there that's regulated, that there's, rules, regulations, policies, protocols. That's what you need, and that's all you need. And I think it's there, it's a sport. It's not one of my hobbies, but at the end of the day, I don't see anything at all wrong with the way it is. And like a lot of these sports that we have out there, like, if you look across all sports across Ireland, like in everything that we have on the island, every one of them needs to be subsidised, and they need support because of the size of the gate receipts aren't going to be adequate to keep the overall show on the road. So if you look at it all, I think it's okay. I wouldn't see any problem with it. I certainly wouldn't be for shutting it down or closing it down in any sense. I don't think that's the way to go at all.
And the animal welfare aspect of it, I mean, there's been exposés.
There have, Fran, but you'll get those things everywhere, and no matter where you go or what you do, you'll get those, and you really will. And the more of those that are weeded out, the better, and they need to be highlighted, and they need to be, created in such a way that they're extinct, and the people that are engaged in that type of thing, they need to be highlighted and prosecuted if that's the case, and banned from ever having them again or having them for years and years. That needs to be done. But you see, you also see cruelty to animals outside there. Like, I saw somebody there the other day, and it was 20 or 30 livestock, cattle, and they were skin and bone, so you get that across all divides, wherever it is. But in terms of greyhound racing, it's on a track. The tracks are regulated. As every animal that's on there, they're traced. Yes, you'll always get somebody to say, I did this and I did that, I rubbed poutine on him and he ran faster, and I gave him a banana and he ran slower, and you have all that sort of stuff. But you look, they're tricks to the trade.
Yeah. Is it inevitable that it will be banned at some point or other when you see in the other jurisdictions are completely banning this?
I would say it's inevitable. There might, Carl mentioned there is a decline in some of the areas, but I don't see at this stage, because it is, so regulated, that at this stage that there's, that it's going to be banned at any stage.
Okay.
No, that could change down the road, but because people's habits are changing, we're not going out as much as we used to as a society now.
Depends on the makeup of a future government as well, because other parties have very different views on this.
And if the funding continues, if they decide to decrease the funding, it may be that they can't sustain the number of places that remain open in the future, and it might be just the case where there's just one or two places, and if the funding does decrease. So there could be a decline that way.
Well, do you think it's inevitable down the road that this will be?
I think that with the change in attitudes of people, it's probably more likely that it doesn't even need to be banned, that it simply perishes of its own accord, unless an injection of some fairly serious marketing is done to bring it to the attention of the populace again as something that is well regulated, well treated, that animals have a full life, and at the end of that life they're retired. My aunt runs a retirement place in Scotland for Irish greyhounds, and because they do get retired now, whereas before in the 70s and 80s they got brought out into the backfield and they got introduced to some lead, and that was the end of their life. The end of their use was the end of their life, and that has changed. So if the attitudes can change and the marketing was done, then yes, you could have a viable and maybe a unique tourist attraction for Ireland.
Because it's banned in other jurisdictions, you think that maybe people who are enthusiasts might come here? Is that
if it was done properly?
Okay, all right, interesting one. Speaking of animals, a national protest walk will take place in Clonmel on Saturday the 11th, organised by councillors Michael Chicken Brennan and Liam Brown in partnership with My Lovely Horse Rescue, and the event aims to draw attention to the increasing dangers associated with sulky running on public roads, and this follows the tragic incident in the Old Bridge last week. Joe, is a protest march, is that the best way to highlight the issues around sulky racing?
I suppose that's a very good question, Fran. And if you take that as a question on its own, if you look at, say, Grace's Law, or look at any of these things, they did set off with a protest. There has to be, for some reason or other in this country, we have to have a march. We have to have
people have to be out on the streets. Yeah.
People have to. Yeah, you have to get feet on the street for whatever reason it is. I don't know, but that is the route that people go. Upon on the route, but that is the way people go. This. When I was on the council from 9 to 2014, I tried my level best to get legislation brought in and enacted and all that in relation to controlling the issues that were going on in that area. And it's a very awkward one in terms of how do you do it, how do you put a blanket ban on everything, There was a good old friend of mine, Lord to mercy on him, from Featherton. He used to go off on the old pony and trap, and he'd pull up and he'd have a pint or two and he'd head away home, and how it wouldn't be right to ban that. Yet and all, if you go to a place like Killarney and you see the Jarvies and all that, they're all licensed, they're all regulated, so it can be done. But I think there's an awful lot of dangers that are out there that are refusing to be addressed by a lot of people. I really think that it's not, at the end of the day, what's drawing this cart, let it be a sulky or something else, is an animal. And some are more powerful than others. And you cannot, in no way in the wide earthly world, should you have a child of 10 or 12 years of age in charge of one of those, because they are only a child. And the questions that people don't ask or don't answer or don't talk about it, there last week, the one the Old Bridge, why wasn't that child in school? Why wasn't call a spade, But if you look at all these things, they should be licensed, they should be certainly regulated, no more than we're talking about the previous topic. They should be regulated, they should be licensed, and they should certainly be insured.
And should that come, as Michael Murphy is advocating, from a national framework as opposed to local bylaws?
I think it should. But I also think, I was listening to Michael Murphy talking yesterday. I was listening to Michael and Brennan and Liam Brown on the day before as well. I was listening to him. They were talking about down in Kilkenny. What's down in Kilkenny is sort of, it's banned, we'll say, from the city centre.
Yes.
Sort of stuff.
Yeah.
But that's no good, like in the village at the outskirts. Like, I was coming in from a fella there last week, and, it was dark, and there was 2 sulkies in front of me for about 5 miles, no lights,
on the Feathered
no nothing,
Road,
on the Feathered Road,
which is a narrow.
It's a narrow road, and a jeep behind them.
Yeah.
And then they turned right, and one of the ponies fell. Now, they didn't fall through cruelty; they just slipped on gravel. I'll say it as it is. They slipped on gravel or something, and off they got up. But like, these are accidents waiting to happen. If you're outside there, like, the public road is the public road, and if you're outside there, like if you're driving, say a tractor or the car, you have to have your L plate, your N plate, whatever other they go on. You have to do the same thing. You can drive a minibus up to an 8-seater, then you have to have a license to go to a 16-seater, and you have these people like out in charge of animals with nothing. There is no high-vis jacket. There's no insurance. There's no legislation. There's no registration. Nobody knows who's driving what. Nobody knows who's doing what. And it won't change. Sadly, Fran, it won't change until somebody is killed.
But this is going back a long time. I mean, you're saying when you were on the council, what's that, about 16 years ago, was it?
It was 2009 to 14.
Okay, right.
Fran, yeah.
So this is going on a long time.
It's going on a long time.
Yeah, and we saw with the scramblers, though, that the government can act quickly if they want to, where legislation is concerned.
They can, but the common denominator, which is the sad part, there was somebody killed.
Died. Yeah.
And this is the unfortunate.
Yeah.
And you go back to your march. Should there be a march? Like, we shouldn't need a march. We shouldn't need somebody to be killed. This should be done. And this should be like, how in the name of God, like, should any person leave a 10 or 12-year-old up on a sulky on their own, driving down the road against traffic? Traffic, we were talking earlier on there before we came in, traffic has increased dramatically since back in the day, as everybody knows. And there's all kinds of regulations about drug driving and drink driving. The whole thing has evolved, developed as you go along. And still in all, you have this certain aspect of carry on. And it's I'm not discriminating against anybody while saying this. This is dangerous and deadly dangerous. And if something isn't done, there will be lives lost.
All right, Colette, how do you feel about this?
I would have similar to Joe. I think that everybody that's on the road, and won't be popular for saying cyclists, but I think everybody that's on the road needs some kind of registration, because cyclists can be a danger both to themselves and can be a danger to road users, and road users can be a danger to them. So I think everyone that's on the road using the public road should have some kind of registration, should have insurance for their own safety as well as everybody else's. I do think as well that having, say, races like that on a public road is just completely not on.
Racing now is illegal. To actually race is illegal.
Is illegal, but it's still going on. So maybe like that there is a forum for it. So like this, when you have road races, they apply for a permit. They would have Garda presence, and there's, if people are racing sulkies, they should be doing the exact same thing. They should just be following the existing laws that are already in place and just doing the same thing that everyone else is doing.
The idea of a march, a protest march, then, because from my understanding is that people will come from all over the country for this.
Yeah, protest is kind of a funny word. Maybe they want to use the word, march instead.
Well, this is their own.
I know it is. And knowing Councillor Brown and Councillor Brennan, I'm sure that they will do everything possible to ensure that it's peaceful and that that it's done properly and that it's organised properly. I have heard tellings that there is counter-protest marches being organised as well, which would worry me about that. And I'm sure that's not something that they want to see either on the day. I do agree that sometimes people just need to come out and voice things, and if there is a public demonstration for something, there is more likelihood that something would be done.
Yeah, that's interesting, because that's the point that Joe is making, that sometimes people have to get out and be seen for the government to take some sort of action.
Yes, because we see, and we've talked about this on social media, that people that just talk about things in social media, nothing is going to change from doing that. That you do need to come out and voice your opinion on something. But I would hope that it's just done properly and just done peacefully.
Right. And do you go along with the notion national framework is needed as opposed to maybe local bylaws?
Exactly. And it's not just about one minority, like it's about anyone that uses the road like that. I was in 2 Mile Burst during the summer and met a man who was coming from Kilkenny, has this beautiful kind of carriage and just goes out and uses it. And, he has, there's as much right for him to be insured on the road as there is for anybody else. I just think the law just needs to be followed for everybody and that the road is safe for everyone.
Carl, how do you feel about this?
This is one of those cans of worms that when you open it, you don't know what you're going to pull out.
What do you mean by that, then?
We have animal welfare. Are the animals being properly taken care of? In the recent past, we've had examples of in Clonmel, an animal dying on the road because it had been driven to the point of exhaustion and died. We have the animal last time on the old bridge, struck by a car and killed. The drivers of the sulkies being underage, being incompetent, having no certificate to say that they have any competency, no training, no formalised training. And I grew up with horses, race horses. Horses are 400 kilos of an animal if it's a racehorse, or let's say it's your sulky. It's got a mind of its own. It's not like a car. It won't go where you tell it all the time. And it can be spooked, it can be moved, and you have to have experience to know how to deal with that. Yep, you need to have insurance. You need to have, at the very least, a license for the conveyance. You need insurance. I personally think that to own a horse in Ireland, you should have to have the means of taking care of it. And that means the appropriate amount of land that you either own or lease so that the horse can have a decent place to live. It should have regular vets visits, and those, maybe just once a year, need to be done in such a way that they're registered and you have to do them. The same ways you have to have a CPC if you're a truck driver. You have to have a continuous evaluation of your competency.
But that would be an enormous job to police all of that and to inspect all of that.
It really would, wouldn't it? It would be a job that you might think that you'd need a national framework. And if you want to take sulky racing off the road, then maybe the participants in sulky racing need to do what every other sport has done. Buy a ground, develop it, and run your races in your own arena.
Jimmy Delaney spoke to us the other day, and I know Jimmy for a long time. I went out on a sulky with him, had a great time, I must admit. I saw how he looked after his horses, just absolutely incredible. And he's putting an organisation together, and their aspirations are a lot of what you said there, training, the possibility of a ground at some stage or other where maybe it could become a sport that people would pay in and watch and the like, proper training. He doesn't believe that kids should be on sulkies. So dialogue is really what it's about too, isn't it?
Dialogue means that two people are talking. And all too often we get one side saying, when something like this has happened, this needs to be stopped, this needs to be banned, this needs to be gotten rid of. Because the other side of the equation, the people using the sulkies, are not adhering to the rules of the road. They're too young, there's no common sense being employed, and there's sometimes belligerence. So how do you have a dialogue when not everybody wants to talk?
Well, you have to identify who wants to talk and who can represent the various communities involved. Yes, Joe.
But I think, though, as well as this, Ran, you see, I was listening to Jimmy Delaney there the other day on the radio. That I went through all this before when I was on the council in relation to, they were forming an organisation. And go back to Carl's point, there is legislation there that you must either own or access something like, I'm forgetting off the top of my head, something like an acre for each animal or something like this. And if you don't own it, you must have access to it, you must be able to rent it, and you must be able to distribute it. But you see, that's not enforced, that's not checked up on that, because there's not enough people. And go back to your point, it's a national framework, here we go again. But the reality of all this is, and this is the crunch, what happens to the Joe here who won't join that organisation? What happens to the Joe who's in that organisation and is removed from the organisation because he don't obey the rules? What happens to that Joe then? That Joe is out there then freelancing. And the other problem here, and this is an issue that needs to be addressed as well, is when we're talking, say, about sulky racing. Now, what is racing? I see a lot of stuff going on, and it's nearly like time trials. It's not one animal racing another animal. I see stuff going on with a jeep following one sulky on its own, flying down along the road, and I mean flying down along the road, checking to see the speed but they're not racing against anything else other than the clock.
So that's outside of the law then?
That's outside of the law.
Yeah,
and on top of that then, if you look at right, you're talking about animals and fields, and you're talking about all these things. If you look at the 4 steel shoes that should be on a horse in the first, and they're not always there, but that should be. How is that steel is not going to stop on macadam, on tar. That's not going to happen. And that's why they skid, and that's why they fall. They will stop in a field because they're not going that speed in the field in the first place. But I've seen them my own 2 eyes, and the problem that we have in this country, and it's happened several times, sadly to say, somebody will be killed before something is done. And that's the sad part.
Right,
Nobody wants that.
From what I'm hearing today, Colette, good luck with trying to legislate for this. It's enormous, isn't it? It's becoming enormous now. The more we tease it out, even.
It is, but it doesn't mean we can't have the conversations either. And I'd be very encouraged with the likes of Jimmy Delaney coming forward, because I think there needs to be more accountability in the traveller community themselves as well, that they are willing to come forward and adhere to the rules and talk about putting legislation forward, because without their buy-in, there's no point. You could have all the rules in the world. There's rules already there that are not being complied with by everybody, not just, I'm not naming out one community, but unless you have the buy-in of the community that are using these, it's not going to change.
Yeah, you have to have the Gardaí involved.
You do, but the guards have to want to enforce the law. And speaking to Gardaí,
I'm sure they would tell you
they don't have the resources.
The resources.
Yeah, well, it's about resources. It's not that they don't want to enforce the law.
No, it's that they feel unable to enforce the law for whatever reason. Yeah. And the reasons, anecdotally, are myriad.
But if you look at
he's saying this with a smirk on his face. I'm not sure what I should read into that.
But if you look at some of the things that has happened in the positive way, look at how quick the no smoking ban came in and how successful it was.
Yeah.
Look at how quick, said, the plastic bottle ban or whatever you want to call it came in.
So if we want to do this,
correct,
we can do it,
and it can be done right with consultation. I'm not saying bulldoze in anything. With consultation and all that, do it right. But you don't see many, you don't see a farmer out there handing his bull to a 10-year-old child to bring in off the field, do you?
No.
So, how in the name of God should you leave a child of any that age, 8, 10, 12, 14, up on an animal out on a road?
Right, but you see kids up on scooters and up on all sorts of stuff, and you see madness going on.
Absolutely, but eventually, what'll happen?
Somebody will be killed.
Somebody will be killed.
And they have been off scooters.
Let me just take a break. We'll be back with our panel in a moment.
Tipp FM's Tip Today.
With Slattery's Garage Puck-On. Now is the time to pick up your next van. From the award-winning Peugeot Partner van to the expert and the load-lugging Boxer van. We have big vans, Slattery's Garage Puck-On. It's time to change. Test drive the award-winning range of Peugeot hybrids and fully electric vehicles at Slattery's Garage today. See slatterysgarage.ie.
Welcome back to our Friday panel, and Joe Leahy is with us, Colette Roach and Carol Clancy as well. On Tuesday we heard from former GRA representative for Tipperary, retired Garda, Tom Finn, and he was in touch to highlight some of the issues he's currently seeing from the outside, so to speak, and he gave us some information ahead of my chat with the Taoiseach. He said recruitment is falling far behind, resignations are at an all-time high, every member eligible to retire is doing so. And he said, as he told me, over the past 8 to 10 years, this is the result of poor management under the previous commissioner in particular, who did nothing for the Gardaí and allowed the organisation to decline, with the Fine Gael government failing to intervene. So can I start with you, Joe, because you have experience of the Gardaí here. What do you make of what Tom Finnan said there?
Yeah, I'd agree with a lot of what Tom has said, and I would Drew Harris, he came in to fix a problem, or he was catapulted in to fix a problem. He was there for 7 years, and he made the problem 50 times worse, and I have no hesitation in saying that.
50 times worse?
And I have no hesitation in saying 50 times worse. None. And one of the biggest problems that the Gardaí have, and it's going on with years, and I've said it on this programme before to you, is this internal investigation. You're being investigated by your own. But the people ultimately that investigate you, people need to understand it, the people ultimately that are setting out to investigate you, they will be on a promotion list going up the ladder. So they're going to do what what the gods want you to do. And that is the reality of life. And if you don't do it, then you're going to be knocked off to your pedestal on the promotion ladder.
Wow.
And that is a fact. That is the way it has worked. I've seen it for years. And when you look, the other thing has changed. An awful lot of things have changed in life. Years and years ago, like when I joined the Guards back in 1973, you could do an entrance exam, you can still do that, you do this, you do that. But you had nothing else in your back pocket. You had no certificate in anything. You had a diploma, you had a degree. Now there's people joining of 20 or 30, 40 years of age with degrees and everything. So while they go into join that job and they're in that job, they can leave in the morning because they can walk into another job. I know a chap the other day got a job driving a JCB on a very clean site now. A big site, but a clean site. Not on a building site now. $21.50 an hour.
Wow.
Now, there's nobody going to be complaining him. There's nobody going to be photographing him. There's nobody going to take any notice of him. Whereas the Guards, their hands are tied. And what has happened then with him? Over the last 7 years in particular, they're suspended. Look at that fiasco that went on above in Limerick. If somebody only put the cost on that.
Well, imagine what the cost is going to be when they finally sue the state.
And then when you go along, and you see the guy the other day there, okay, we can't talk about it too much because he's probably appealing it, but suspended for 2 years
because he chased a scrambler.
Because he chased. So what are you supposed to do? Say some fella passes down the road, I'm standing beside the road, your car is stolen, and am I supposed to say, "Hi there, Johnny, come over here, aren't you?" Sure, that's not policing. It doesn't work like that. And I would see, why are blue lights fitted to the car in the first place? They're there for an emergency. Like the ambulance, like the fire brigade, like the Guards, that's what they have.
Right. So it's no surprise to you that it is the way it is.
None in the world. It's no surprise. And I've seen people, Fran, I spoke to 2 people in the past fortnight, and how they've been, hopefully I'll be able to talk to you about it someday, how one in particular has been treated is absolutely nothing short of shocking. Shocking. And it's none of the cases that I'm after referring to. It's disgraceful. No support, no backup, no nothing. And that is the way, and I can understand why I see people they're leaving in droves because they can't stick what's going on.
We're hearing about people going through the training, coming out, spending very little time in the force and saying, this ain't for me, this is
correct.
Isn't non-runner. Carol, how are you feeling about this?
I will agree very much with Joe in the Drew Harris is the worst thing that happened to Irish Guards in a long time. He brought in the adversarial PSNI model where it was the police versus the populace. And that really did a lot of damage to the image of the Guards. Because Guards guard
people. So it was an ideology he brought with him, is that what you're saying? Yeah.
Guards guard people. Police people. And there's a difference because one's standing in front of you, between you and harm, and the other assumes you are the harm. And that kind of an ideology has really drained the morale from the force. They work long hours. They work unsociable hours. A young guard has to go somewhere in the country, miles from where they come from. Their pay is not great at the start. It's not the worst, but it's certainly not great for what they have to put up with. The resources, guards don't have cars. They don't have the number of guards to deal with all the stuff that they have to deal with. you put that and public enmity against the guards. Like Joe was saying, a guard 30 or 40 years ago said, "Come here to me, you." You went very sheepishly over to your guard and you said, "Sorry, guard." And the guard would say, "Get yourself home," and you went. Now, the guards are viewed as, "Sure, you're just a lad doing a job, and I have no respect for the job you do, so I'm not going to have any respect for the person doing it."
Right.
So
We've
all
heard
of
stories
those-
about kids abusing them because they know they can't do anything about
and
it.
it's become a very dangerous job because in the places they're called to, it's usually the last resort. So you've called the guards because somebody's kicked off on a Saturday night and they need to be restrained. Okay, the guards have to go out there and they have to put themselves in harm's way. And that's not fair when you don't have enough numbers to deal with what needs to be done and those numbers aren't properly resourced. It's no surprise to anyone that you'd leave. There's exact same criteria as why people are leaving the army in droves.
In Cashel recently we heard about that female Garda who was attacked as well. So these things are very real. These
they are,
dangers.
and you can see then as well, like in that one instance as well you're talking about, that person was skipping down the town 6 hours later. So there's a huge morale issue with Gardaí, and no wonder there is, because one of the instances they face, they put all the manpower into prosecuting someone, to getting a case over the line, and next minute the case goes to court and the person has 50 odd previous convictions and they get off with a suspended sentence. So there is that part of the issue as well. There's a whole host of issues that need to be addressed, and that is definitely one of them, the judiciary and people getting, chance after chance after chance, because that has to be demoralising for the Gardaí. They've put all that effort into it.
Well, you see, we're told we don't have in the prison spaces, Colette, either.
I know, and prison isn't always the answer either. I agree with Carl. We've gone from a very different policing aspect now. Like there's very few community police anymore, community guards. Like there was a time where you'd know every guard that was below in the station. Now I wouldn't even know what they look like now. I think our big issue in Tipperary as well is that we don't have a chief here. Our chief is above in Ennis. There's a fair bit of distance between Ennis and Carrick-on-Shore. So those guards that are here in Tipperary, they're not supported. How could they be? Because they don't have the support here.
What I don't understand, Colette, is why. I mean, most of us accept that new model between Ennis and Tipperary doesn't work. But still, we're going to trundle on with it.
And you see, this is the whole thing. It's, I suppose, a whole government thing as well. Everything is centralised in Dublin. We centralise everything because it's good economic sense. Like, it doesn't work for things like this. Now, I do think that, and speaking to guards, they will say that the Drew Harris period is, has been an absolute disaster, and it will take time. I think the new commissioner is going to, he does seem like a very decent man, wants to do a good job, but it will take time. But I do think another model they need to look at is putting an assistant commissioner for rural policing. Having someone that's outside, like all the top echelons are all in Dublin. I think they need somebody that's down the country looking specifically at how rural policing works.
Yeah, did you want to get in on that, Carol, as well? Yeah,
I suppose the from my point of view, I spent the last 39 years learning martial arts and training and teaching people, and I look at the Gardaí and the training they receive in personal protection, and I would say it's woefully inadequate. And that's one aspect. There are other aspects of the Guards where they're just not, because they need to get them out the gap as quick as they can, they're just not getting the grounding they need to be effective police. And to be effective in the community means that you need to know an awful lot more about psychology than you need to know about the statute book.
Declan was on to us, Joe, and he says the worst case he saw was the guard that gave the unused bike to the old farmer during COVID. He was suspended. He got $250,000 of taxpayers' money to make up for you couldn't make it up, says Declan. These are kind of nonsense.
But you're spot on, and so is Declan spot on. But look at it, there's four of us here in the studio, and when you look at it, how in the name of the Lord God, like the great old Pudsey Ryan years ago, sure God, you couldn't. How long would it take you to investigate that? Look at the people that were involved, like, right? There was the farmer who got the bike, there was the guard who gave him the bike, and there was who was ever in charge of the station. Like, you're not looking at a million witnesses here now, like, right? And yet and all, he was suspended for something like 2.5 years or something.
Even though he didn't benefit from this in any way.
Not in any way. Not good, Baron.
Yeah.
And how is it that somebody can't stand up and make a decision and say, in the name of God, would you cop onto yourself, go and have a cup of tea and forget about them? Right.
There's more bodies now even policing the police than there is actual guards out there.
And this is my problem. I keep saying this the whole time. This internal investigation that's gone on, it's rotten to the core, and I'll say that to anybody's face. Rotten.
All right. Let me take a break. Back with our panel in a moment.
Tip FM's Tip Today.
Our Friday panel, and Carl, Joan, Collette still with us. Sadly, we don't have as much time as I would like on this, but Maggie Butler spoke to me on Wednesday. She had been a valued contributor to Tip Today for many years. For 14 years, she devoted her life, basically, and her family to her son Alex, who had special needs. Now, tragically, Alex passed away last year, but she spoke quite openly about the realities of being a carer. Her twin boys, born prematurely in 2011, Alex was diagnosed with a whole range of very profound health issues, and her battle with the system began pretty much straight away at that point. Colette, I'm not sure if you got a chance to hear that piece, but we got a huge reaction to it.
I'm not surprised. I actually only listened back to it this morning because I hadn't heard it during the week. Now, I have heard Maggie speak before.
Yeah.
She spoke so eloquently and very honestly about her experience, and I was very moved by it. But I was horrified at some of the things that she said, and I just thought it was so unfair that some of the lengths that she had to go to ask for just a small bit of help, and the experience that she had, and it's not acceptable. And I don't think any person could say that the kind of things that carers are having to come up against is okay. It's just not.
What struck me was the indignity of some of the situations she was in, and the coldness and the lack of empathy that was out there for somebody.
Yeah, that did surprise me because, and maybe it's just from people that are, if they're in these jobs, that they see the same thing day after day, and you eventually maybe you just become immune to it. But I just find it very upsetting to think that was the kind of reception that people get when they're asking for help. I have a great belief that I don't think there should be any means test for carers. I don't think there's any justification for it whatsoever. And I've heard people in government say different things about why they need to have a means test. I completely disagree with that, just on a personal level.
She finally got €1,000 to cope with one of the electricity bills, but
and sent her a letter saying,
"This is it.
This is it. That's all you're ever getting." I mean, imagine if you have a child, as she said, like on a ventilator, or that you need to have that extra. So, like, it shouldn't be that here's a one-off payment. It was basically, that's what you get now. Go away and don't ask for any more.
Yeah, I thought that was just incredible. Carl, how do you feel about this?
Well, I mentioned this topic to Rebecca this morning over breakfast, and the first thing she said was, "Oh, God love them." And I think that's kind of covers everything. Carers are the unsung heroes. Carers are working 3 jobs because there's a 24-hour shift, 7 days a week, for as long as you have to do it. And to say that that's not worth being paid at least a living wage is ridiculous. It saves the state probably into the hundreds of millions. It takes resources that aren't available in the HSE and puts them out into the community. So a bed, a full-time nurse, somebody who's doing all your admin, all your cooking, all your cleaning, it's taking all of that weight off the HSE. And the HSE is already struggling under the weight of everything it's got to do. And yet, when they had a recruitment freeze, they still managed to hire admin. So the admin is wildly disproportionate with the amount of nurses and doctors we need. And that breeds that lack of empathy, because you're only admin, you're not involved with the people that you're making decisions about. You're not there at the coalface. Like Colette said, there shouldn't be a means test. The means test for becoming a carer should be somebody arriving. Do you have somebody who needs care? I do. What do they need? Let's get it for them. Now, is this going to be your full-time job? Yes, it is. Well, then here are you getting paid like any... If a carer was to work in a nursing home, again, they'd be making $21.50 an hour after a couple of years. So why isn't a carer who's having to do it their whole life being paid commensurately?
I'm sure a lot of people will be on to us and say, we're working in nursing homes, we're not making €21 per hour. Joe, are you surprised with anything you heard from Maggie?
Not surprised. Sadly, not surprised. I'd agree totally with the two speakers. I did hear Maggie bring tears to a stone, and that's the truth, Fran. It was, and you often wonder, I often hear you talking, we'll say, about the unelected people that are there. I wonder, who decided to issue that letter to Maggie that this is your once-off payment, there you go, let your
don't be looking for any more.
Who decided that? I wonder who decided that. And again, I'll go back, when you go back, and I'll come back to this in a second, when you go back to this thing in Limerick and all this investigation with the guards in Limerick and all that kind of thing, the guards are shown all over the place, all over the way. They showed very, very few photographs of the people that did the investigation and carried out all this investigation, and the same thing applies here. What we've got here is that the people that are put out front, or that are willing to go out front, they're the people that are suffering. They're the people that are going through the trials and tribulations of all this, the Maggies of this world, and sadly there are many. But why on earth almighty can't somebody come out and say, hold on, that couldn't be right. If the lady needs money to look after, she wasn't going drinking, she wasn't going gambling. It was clear why she wanted the money. And why not say, as the lads have said, fully support the woman, fully support her.
Yeah, rather than it being on somebody's whim, whether or not we will grant something to these people.
And isn't that coming back to the power that I have? I'm powerful. I'll decide whether you get it or you won't get it. It's almost a threatening letter, It literally is and that's terrible power to give to people that don't deserve power,
Yeah, have you any reason to believe that this is being addressed, Colette? From a political point of view.
I do, because I've been at meetings and been at forums where there's discussion around policy, around carers, and around the care sector. So, there is good people in government that do want to change things, but I think sometimes there's a slowness and there's a lack of understanding of what someone like Maggie is going through. I think they're looking at it on an economic point of view, and they're looking at it on an economy of scale. And that doesn't make them bad people.
Look at what they tried to do with the SNAs a few weeks ago. Absolute madness.
Yeah, and it made no sense of doing that. Made no sense whatsoever.
It was a PR disaster, even if you want to be just...
But it's not that they're bad people. I think it's just a lack of understanding of the Maggies of this world, the understanding of actually what's going on. They're looking at it at a high level point of view, instead of looking at it on the individual person.
Well, it's such a pity, and as you say, it was heartbreaking for so many people to listen. We got such a reaction to Maggie's piece the other day. That wraps up things for today. Excellent panel. Thanks very much indeed to Carol, to Joe, and to Colette. Stephen was producing, and the other Stephen is on the way with the time tunnel. And I will talk to you on Tuesday. Have a great Easter, and do look after yourselves, won't you? Bye-bye.
Tip FM's Tip Today.
With Slattery's Garage, Puck On. Main Peugeot dealers in the Premier County. And now stocking the full range of the luxury French car brand DS Automobiles. Book your test drive today with Slattery's Garage, Puck On. See slatterysgarage.com.